Hello, friends. Welcome back to a very special All Hallows Eve episode this week. Been a little bit of time since we spoke. Last episode I did was Odd Pittsburgh, Halloween edition. It was fantastic. And, I just been trying to work during October to get some shit done. Usually in October, I'm able to get a lot of fall activities done, but this October I feel like was the fastest one I've ever experienced. Before it was here, now it's gone. This year I did manage to hit some, I hit a lengthy list of haunted houses. Hit Castle Blood, hit 100 Acres Manor, Scare House. Last night we went to Demon House, and then, obviously me and Antoinette hit all that spooky shit down in Florida whenever we went there. But yeah, today's Halloween. This past week, on Thursday, I had a podcast that was recorded, but realistically, I was not as happy with the episode as I know it could have been. Me and a couple other people originally recorded, and it just, it was just disorganized. We were all excited, and it was just disorganized. But me and Ryan Privett, who has been on the podcast a couple times, he was on in 2020 whenever I did the Ultimate Horror Movie Survival Guide. It was a 4-hour, 2-part episode of us breaking down both of our top 5 favorite horror movies of all time, which is a fantastic episode. If you would like to check that out, go ahead. But this week, I wanted to kind of do something similar, but also celebrate Halloween with some spooky movie talk. So this week, I sit down with Ryan Privett to do the Ultimate Spooky Movie Compendium. I think that's what the title is going to be. But me and Ryan sit down and we decipher, or actually we don't decipher, but we comb through a list of some of the 7 big horror movies of, the last, 60 years, whatever. But basically, I wanted to kind of talk about some movies that were like the pillars of horror. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to talk about the big deals of the horror genre. If we could. Obviously, this is just our take on this, and obviously there are many other great films out there, but this is just 7 that we were able to come up with. So originally I also did this episode with Dan from Baxter and the Bear. He is also a movie guy, but when we re-recorded this, Dan's schedule was not able to make this work, so me and Ryan sat down, but we worked in some of the movies that Dan picked as well. So the 7 movies that we go through this episode, we start out with Rosemary's Baby, which is 1968. Then we move along to The Exorcist, which is 1973. Then right over to the original Halloween, which is 1978. Then to a little jump to The Strangers, which happened in 2008. Then we move to The Conjuring, which was 2013. Then right along to A24's The Witch. And then the cherry on top is A24's Hereditary, which came out in, I think, 2018. The Witch was 2016. But, me and Ryan sit down and we have a super nerd elevated cinema. We have an elevated cinema talk about all these movies, about what we feel about them, about, we break down the synopsis, we break down some of the things we love about these movies, some of the things we hate about these movies. Obviously, there are spoiler alerts. If you haven't seen Rosemary's Baby, it's 1968, you had yourself some time. But if you would like to listen and kind of figure out what we're going along, watch any of these movies you haven't yet. I know some of them you probably are, you're probably familiar with the original Halloween. You're probably familiar with The Exorcist. You might not need to go back and watch that, but me and Ryan kind of get into the weeds. We're talking about some like unique trivia about, not really trivia, but unique facts about the production of these films, some of the weird stuff that happened behind it. We talk about, just some good stuff. about each film. These are some films over the last, 60 years that are pretty prolific in our eyes. I have to say, originally, we were only going to be talking about The Exorcist, Halloween, The Witch, and Hereditary, because those were some movies that Dan originally has never seen. But we're adapting. We're on the fly. We're adapting, and we're making some shit happen. But I took a poll on Instagram to ask some people, what are some of your favorite scary movies? And surprisingly enough, my two most frequent answers are The Conjuring and The Strangers. So that's why we added them to the list. And I have to say, I didn't even think about them whenever I was first, talking to Ryan about this. So it was cool to have a little bit of feedback from the audience on what they liked. And I was glad we were able to incorporate that. But again, I'm pumped about it. Halloween's over. It sucks. But, I'm real big into the spooky. And for me being as busy as I was this October, I felt it was great. I didn't even put up Halloween decorations this year. It's a sin. But that just means that, today's Halloween. It means tomorrow I'm going to be digging my Christmas tree out of the cupboard, and I'm going to be putting that bastard up, and we're going to be ringing in the new year all for the remainder of 2022. Yeah. We're just going to do it. It's going to be great. So I'll quit talking your ear off. I appreciate you being patient. I wanted to give you a great quality episode, and I really think we were able to do that. Me and Ryan are a good team whenever it comes to talking about cinema. So if you like this type of conversation, and it's right up your alley, in your wheelhouse, and you want to hear a Christmas edition, let me know. Me and Ryan will come back on here. We'll talk about some horror that has some Christmas horror and, some holiday horror, so to speak, because I had a good time. So without further ado, episode 221 of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with Ryan Privett, the ultimate spooky movie compendium.
Telephone.
Hello?
Telephone.
I'll call you right back. Call you right back.
Telephone.
I'll Call You Right Back podcast. All right, so I think that we're going to be able to do this a little bit more organized. And I kind of have like a template on what we could follow to kind of keep us in line and like kind of keep us on track and not too, not too tangential, but, thorough. This is going to be an elevated conversation about some horror cinema.
I hope so.
Very elevated, a little bit nerdy. This is going to be a little bit of inside baseball, hopefully enough. So get yourself situated, get some popcorn ready. But episode 221, I didn't know what to call it. I think I'm going to call it Spooky Ass Movies, maybe. I don't know. We already recorded this once, and it did not come out how we wanted it to. We recorded that with Dan from Baxter and the Bear, but we could not make this time period work. So me and Ryan are going in again to make this sound a little bit tighter.
Yeah. Definitely tighter. Tighter is the best word, I think.
Just a little bit tighter. And it's nothing against it's nothing against Dan. And it's not like we kicked him out or nothing, but we just couldn't make it work. And honestly, interviewing with more than one guest is just too distracting.
It was a lot of oh, no, you go. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. It's your turn.
It's also you give your opinion, and then I go, oh, what about your opinion? And it's just it kind of is
doesn't feel natural.
It does not feel natural, but I think that this is going to be, a little bit more smooth. So you were on previously in 2020 for the Ultimate Horror Movie Survival Guide, 4-hour episode. We dissected our top 5 favorite movies each.
5 each.
And I mean, it was pretty good, very highly reviewed. And you said that recently you were walking in the mall and someone came up to you and they noticed you from that episode.
Yeah. It was in the Van store. I just popped in real quick to look at any new shoes, and the guy working there comes over to me and he goes, "Hey, are you Ryan? You were on the I Call You Right Back horror movie podcast." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, this is weird." Like
2 years later.
Yeah. And he was like, "Hey man, like, oh, I see you work at the theater," because I was at work, so I had my AMC shirt on. And he goes, "Can I just ask you something? You know, what did you think of he was asking me about Pearl and Barbarian?"
Yeah.
Because those were like the two recent ones at the time. And yeah, we just like talked for like 10 minutes. You know, he said he loved the episode. He asked if we were going to do another one, and we just, bullshit about movies for a little.
Yeah, a little bit thorough.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like that you are, you're more of like you're more of like in the weeds of everything. I watch movies at face value. I don't really do a lot of research into things. I don't really know, I don't know directors. I don't know what's won awards or anything like that, but you kind of get into it to a different level. And you've always been like that. You're the one person I know that is probably like the biggest cinephile that I know.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of, when it all started. And I feel like it was definitely when I started really getting into it was probably high school.
Yeah.
Like what was coming out around that time, like No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
Watchmen came out. I really liked that. And it was a great comic book adaptation. But I remember like basing all my art projects in high school off of these movies that I was watching at the time.
When we were arch nemesises, you were making arch nemesi.
I have no idea.
That might be a plural. Who knows? But you were making that photo of Javier Bardem in the car with the broken window out.
At the very end of the film.
Yeah, and like you were always doing like, I thought that I liked movies a lot because like, I was more the mainstream shit, but like you were, I mean, like, were you like a rental family?
Yeah. So, I grew up, in a divorced family. So it was always like two different types of rentals. I'd go to my dad's on Friday night and there was a Blockbuster right by his house. So it just made sense.
Yeah.
Stop at Blockbuster on the way. And then at my mom's, I lived in Elizabeth, and for a while there, like in middle school, there was that
Central Video, or
like,
not Central Video.
It was like right in Elizabeth. It was right on like the main drag in Elizabeth.
What the hell was that called?
I don't remember. It was in the old funeral home. It was super creepy.
Yeah, very
like,
small.
I could just walk there. There was no like Blockbuster within walking distance or anything, but there was this little mom and pop rental shop.
Yeah.
And I remember like one summer I was obsessed with Scarface. I rented that thing like the entire summer. I watched it probably 8 times. But that was just like, it was easy. I had like, and then, I'd go to my dad's and go to Blockbuster, come back to my mom's, walk down to the video store, grab something else. So,
well, what kind of stuff did they watch? Like, did your parents
They didn't.
They didn't watch anything?
No. It was my grandmother who really got me into movies. She worked at a movie theater when she was a kid.
Oh, that's cool.
And she was always taking, I was like her movie buddy. She wanted to see something new. She would just take me with her. I remember seeing like Planet of the Apes with her, like the Lord of the Rings movies.
That's
the
cool.
Matrix movies. It were things that I had no clue what they were about.
Yeah.
She would just bring me along with her.
That's fun.
That's, who really got me into it. I never really remembered, like, my mom never really took me to the movies. My dad never took me. Like, maybe if it was like a whole family thing, like cousins were going too.
Yeah, but Ian's weren't like, every weekend go see the new stuff.
Definitely not. It was more along the lines of like, if I was going to stay with like my grandparents for a weekend, I would definitely go see something with my grandma.
See, it was weird because whenever we were younger, my aunt and uncle owned a movie rental spot in White Oak called ET Video, and I was the youngest of all my older cousins, so like we were always just watching random shit, and I never really had to adhere to any sort of PG-13, PG guidelines. They were just like whatever. And it was kind of like the Wild West back then. But I was more like the Blockbuster type of main hits,
Sure.
like all the mainstream movies that were coming out, we would watch, but we would go like every weekend, and it was like my brother, me, we would each pick movies, but it was a good way to consume a lot of shit because he was older, so like he was more exposed to like the more raunchy type, like pop culture type stuff that was
Right.
coming out. And, my parents were, I don't know, they were just always into movies. Now that you say that, it's kind of strange because like we always went to the movie theaters and
Yep.
it was cool how we were able to be brought up. But whenever you got into like spooky movies, do you remember like when that started or like what the first spooky movie you watched was?
I guess, some of the first spooky ones I remember would be like Sleepy Hollow,
Yeah.
which is definitely spooky for a kid. I can watch it now. It doesn't creep me out now.
Yeah.
But, like seeing a beheaded guy riding around on a horse and like the whole scene where the witch is like cutting off the bat's head and like draining the blood out. Like that was really freaky.
And
The
when year was
Exorcist,
that?
Too. I don't remember what year that came
Sleepy
out.
Hollow was like probably like 06, 07, somewhere around there.
So something like
Or no, it had to even be younger than that. Probably like 2003, 2004.
99.
Oh, so
Yeah,
like,
so I was like 8.
yeah, 9
Yeah.
years old. So like
Yep,
that
8,
could be
9.
way more spooky than
And
you would think.
The Exorcist too, and The Exorcist was like a friend at my dad's house had it like rented. It was an older friend, and I can't remember how old I was at the time. I was probably like 10, 11, 12. I don't remember, but he was like 14.
Yeah.
Both of us probably still maybe too young for The Exorcist. 14, I mean, but I was like 12,
Yeah.
and there's just like certain things from the movie that just like stuck in my brain.
Yeah,
like,
burned in your brain.
like whenever the priest goes into the church and that like statue of Mary is all like defaced,
yeah.
like the green puke. There's just like certain like things that you
Yeah, that
just like,
stick into your
Yep.
mind.
yeah,
Yeah, it's weird. Mine was my first like exposure to like something that scared me was like the Blair Witch. That was that came out whenever I was like 8 or 9. We saw that in the movie theater, and like I remember just being like absolutely terrified of it because it was like one of the first. It might have been, it was one of the first found footage. So like,
Yeah.
oh, this is real. It's based on true events. And that was like before the internet, whenever you found out stuff was bullshit.
Right.
And you were just like, holy shit, like that's something real. Like that's really out there. And I was in Boy Scouts at the time. So like I was always camping and like, there's a scene in there where they're sleeping in the tent and kids are laughing and you're just like, I would die if something like that happened to me. But that was like the first movie that I remember that like, messed me up where I was like, this is
Yeah.
a real deal.
yeah. But it's like it's weird because I was never. It didn't turn me away. It didn't turn me off from the idea of these movies.
Yeah.
I got scared, but I wanted to just keep watching more.
Yeah.
And that kind of transitioned into like, I feel like we grew up during this time where technology, the internet, cell phones were all evolving so quick as we were like going through like our teen years. And, I had a computer in my room because like my mom got a new computer. She just gave me her old one. And then you find out through like other friends at school, everybody has like a family computer or something at that time.
Yeah.
You find out about like LimeWire and like Napster and things. You can illegally download, everything you want.
And Kazaa and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, I
but I'm
forgot
like
about that.
downloading movies. Yeah, I'm downloading music too. Everybody's downloading the, Linkin Park Numb music video.
Yeah.
But like, so I'm downloading like movies too. And one of the first ones I remember downloading was Cannibal Holocaust,
Yeah.
which is like a 70s found
fucked up.
footage, like Italian horror film.
That has
And,
like real footage in it.
yeah, like they actually
Or
kill
like
animals.
killing animals
yeah,
in there. And
like
that's,
they actually are.
that's like whenever you were younger and someone's like, yo, you ever see Faces of Death? And you're like, Jesus.
same thing.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm trying to really remember like how I heard of these things, but I think you just kind of go into like this
It's word of mouth.
yeah, it's almost like like a YouTube kind of thing that you do nowadays where you look up one video
Yeah,
and
it's
then
a
the
spider
suggested
web.
video and then the next suggested video, and it's like you watch one horror movie, look up something about it maybe, and then you find out about another one and another one and another one.
Yeah, and spirals out from there.
Yeah.
So I mean, like that's true. That's interesting. Like, it was weird to like kind of grow up as that stuff was like kind of shifting because like we had like that. We had that like kind of section of horror where it was like Fear.com, The Ring.
Yep.
Where it was just like kind of stuff that was based on like technology.
Yeah.
I don't know, not really technology, but it's like Fear.com. Do you remember that?
I barely remember it. But
Worst.
I just watched a couple Halloween movies, and I had the same thought of like what you're saying right now. Like I was watching Resurrection.
Yeah.
And they're doing like a live broadcast
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
inside Michael Myers' house.
Yeah,
it's like the
it's
movies
like a
that are coming
TRL.
out in that time were all based around the technology of that time. It was like every horror movie was kind of doing that, like
cell phones and Scream,
Right.
yeah, weird shit like that, and yeah, that's wild. It's wild how that's all periodical. But my thoughts about this conversation that I wanted to do was, basically it was like kind of some of the pillar movies of the horror genre. Like I wanted to think about like some older movies that were like, some of like the pillar movies. And originally, whenever we recorded this with Dan, I had he gave us some suggestions, and one of the movies that he suggested was Rosemary's Baby. And Rosemary's Baby was something that I've never seen. I've always heard about it, but we ended up, me and Ryan both sat down. We watched Rosemary's Baby. We watched The Exorcist. We watched Halloween. We watched The Strangers. We added The Conjuring at the end. I didn't watch it. Ryan did. The Witch and Hereditary. And my plan for this is we're going to kind of go through each of these movies, dissect them, and kind of what we thought about it, what we liked, what we didn't like, and, any of the fun facts that we might have researched along the way, because these are some of the pillar movies of like the last, Rosemary's Baby came out in 1968. So you're looking at like, 60 years almost. Yep. And it's pretty crazy to think about that. So, like I said, 1968, a young wife comes to believe that her offspring is not of this world. Wayfish Rosemary Woodhouse and her struggling actor husband, Guy, move to a New York City apartment building with an ominous reputation and odd neighbors, Roman and Minnie Castevet. When Rosemary becomes pregnant, she becomes increasingly isolated, and the diabolical truth is revealed only after Rosemary gives birth. Now, Rotten Tomatoes score of 96,
critic.
and then the audience score 87.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Letterboxd too. I feel like that's another one people are starting to use more. It has an average on there 4.2 out of 5, which is very high.
Out of 5.
4.2 out of 5.
Okay. Yeah. So that's great. And like I never seen this before. I know you saw this before. My first watch of this in 2022, it was insane. To be completely transparent, I thought it was going to be a struggle to get through. I was like, I'm not putting this 1968 movie on whenever it can't be good. And then, lo and behold, as it's, highly regarded as one of the best horror films of all time, it really was, held up, very bizarre, very psychological. And just, it left it did just enough to make your mind walk down these paths. It led you up to these paths that you didn't know what was going on, and your mind just naturally took them down there. I definitely agreed with the score though.
Yeah, I do.
Now, do you have any favorite, this is where I was going to put I had any favorite moments, any stupid moments, and any trivia or facts about it.
So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things that I liked about this movie. If I tried to think of things that I disliked, I don't know if I could come up with any.
Yeah.
It's like a near perfect film. A lot of the things I liked were things like the little things that you might not, notice, like all the times you can hear the cult members on the other side of the wall.
Yeah.
Like the movie does make a couple points to show you that you can hear them, but there are other times that aren't as noticeable.
Yeah.
Like when Hutch comes over to visit them, and all of a sudden Guy rushes home from work because he's stealing. He needs to steal Hutch's glove.
The glove.
In the back through the rest of that scene, Hutch leaves, and then Guy runs out of the house. In the background, you can hear him going over to the Castevets. You can hear him ring the doorbell, and
Yeah, isn't he telling them that they're pregnant? Or?
No, that was after.
Oh, okay.
So he's giving them the glove.
The glove.
Yeah, but you can hear that in the background. So it's the little things like that I think make this movie kind of stand out a little. And then also the things that are kind of funny in a way too. Like their very first dinner with the Castevets, they're just casually discussing organized religion. They just met these people and they're sitting down for dinner, and
that's the first thing they ask.
Yeah.
Especially back then.
Are you religious?
I guess like back then though, I mean, for this being as good as it is now, it's like I think I try to like conceptualize what it was like back then. Whenever like
Right.
you know, that was a time where like people were going to church every week. You know, it was very like
Yeah, it was a different time.
it was different time, obviously, but like you know, I don't know. It's still wild to think about that like conversation of it all.
Right. And even things like Rosemary's on her period and she's openly talking about being on her period in the movie. She like lays down, she turns the lights out. She lays down on the couch. She pulls out Sammy Davis Jr.'s autobiography, which is about him being a Satanist in part. And then, you know, Minnie Castevet comes over with one of the other Satanists.
Yeah.
And she mentioned something about, this was at like the very beginning, she mentioned something about, you know, being on her period. That's not something you would see in movies back then. Like in the 60s, like women just openly talking about being on their period.
Yeah.
That's, you know,
Well, whenever
almost unheard of.
So I mean, like,
I know it's relevant to the
it's relevant to the,
but it's like showing a flushing toilet in Psycho. It's like one of those things, you know, like
that wasn't something they did.
no.
Yeah, I guess it's weird because like I
It
said,
is weird. Like
to conceptualize it back then, like,
Right.
because now there's really not anything in that movie that's considered to be like, you know, super crazy, you know,
Right.
nothing like, you know, gory or like over the top. But back then it was like the first of its kind, right?
yeah. I mean, it really did break, I think, a lot of barriers in that sense that it did a lot. And like you were saying, it made you feel a lot without really showing you anything.
Yeah.
You don't find out. I mean, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
You don't see anything till the very end. I mean, you could say, I mean,
You really don't even see anything though.
right. I think they originally were going to show the baby at the end. Decided against it, decided let's just leave it up to the audiences.
Yeah, one of the top comments on some of the things that I was reading was it said like, you know, Roman Polanski's best decision ever made was to not show the baby at the end because your imagination is 1,000 times scarier than
Right.
anything you could create.
Yeah. And I mean, we can talk about that again with some of these other films, but yes, absolutely. There's something else too that's very interesting about the film. And I only know this because you see it when you're watching the movie, but you don't think anything of it. And I know this because I read it. When Minnie comes over, when they find out she's pregnant, the Castevets come over. They ask like who your doctor is, and she's like, "No, you're not going to go to Hill anymore. I have a doctor you can go see. Where's your phone at?" She says in the bedroom. Minnie goes into the bedroom. She sits down on the bed, takes the phone to call Saperstein. And Polanski frames it perfectly so that Minnie's body is half cut off by the door frame. And he does that to evoke a reaction from the audience. The reaction from the audience is that everybody's leaning their head to the right. They're trying to see her whole body around this door frame. And it's just kind of like one of those little, you know, director kind of nods. Like this is how I can control the audience almost. This is how I can control your emotion.
Keep them on the edge of their seat.
Right. You know, he's intentionally putting her outside of the frame, halfway outside of the frame. So you're kind of leaning your body over. You're not going to see anything else.
Yeah.
But he's almost getting you to do, you know, what he wants.
That's pretty wild.
It is.
Another thing that like you said that I remember was this came out in 68, but it said it was in 66.
Yeah.
And that was because of why?
So two reasons, because they wanted, the one is that was the same year that the Church of Satan was founded.
Yeah.
And then also because in the movie, I think the baby is born in June and they wanted it to be, so the baby's birthday was June.
666.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yep.
Sick motherfuckers.
Yep.
Is there any other like facts or trivia that you have about that?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple cool things like whenever Rosemary is in that scene where she walks into the middle of traffic.
Yeah, that's real.
That's real.
Yeah, I read that. That was pretty wild.
Yeah. Like Polanski was like, just do it. No one's going to actually hit a pregnant woman. Like just go. And he followed her. He was the one, you know, Polanski was the one actually
like
the
walking
camera
behind her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a wild scene. I forgot about that until I read about it. And I was like, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. The other one is that when she calls, I can't remember his name, when she calls the blind actor's name.
Yeah.
Calls the blind actor. It was Tony Curtis on the other line, which is I don't know if remember she was still married to him at the time or not, or still with him.
No, she wasn't,
But-
because I read during the filming of Rosemary's Baby is whenever she got divorced from Frank Sinatra.
Right. But like Polanski did that intentionally too, because he's like, he wanted to have this confused reaction. So he's like, I want to put someone that she knows on the other line without telling her. So she's going to kind of be like, wait a second, who is this? But she's not going to break character. You know,
Yeah.
she's going to have that look on her face though. Like, wait a second, I know this voice. I know who this. So he wants these genuine reactions.
Yeah, that's pretty wild to
so
think
just
about.
like little things like that.
Oh, wow.
One of the things I really like is just kind of like a little silly thing is at the very end, when Rosemary's startled walking backwards, she just saw, all the Satanists. She just saw her baby. She drops the knife
Yeah.
and it sticks into the floor. Minnie runs over and pulls the knife out and starts rubbing her finger on the dent that the knife made. Like there's this whole like Satanist meeting going on. They just have
She's like not really like...
but she's still like concerned about the shape of her house. You
Yeah.
know, like they're like, this is Satan's
The house
baby.
was sick though. I read that all those scenes were like built and they shot them, they built all them scenes themselves just so they could like kind of control everything, which is also weird because back then, the way that they filmed things were probably so different compared to like now.
Right.
And it really like looked crazy. It looked like it looked legit. I also took clips of like kind of like my favorite parts of the movie that I'm going to play right now.
What have you done to it? What have you done to its eyes?
He has his father's eyes.
What are you talking about? Guy's eyes are normal. What have you done to him, you maniac?
Satan is his father, not Guy. He came up from hell and begat a son of mortal woman. Hail, Satan!
Hail, Satan!
Satan is his father, and his name is Adrian. He shall overthrow the mighty and lay waste their temples. He shall redeem the despised and wreak vengeance in the name of the burned and the tortured. Hail, Adrian! Hail, Adrian! Hail, Satan! Hail, Satan!
He chose you out of all the world, out of all the women in the whole world. He chose you. He arranged things because he wanted you to be the mother of his only living son.
His power is stronger than stronger. His might shall last longer than longer. Yes, Satan!
No! It can't be! No!
Look at his hands and his feet.
Oh, God!
God is dead!
Hail, Satan!
Satan lives! The year is won! Hail!
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty heavy.
Yep.
For back then and again, whenever I was watching that, I was thinking about like how crazy that had to be for people to watch back then that were like, churchgoers and like very religious people. You're like, we can't even put this out on. That was like when shit was still like, you couldn't swear really. It was
Right.
just like such a wild thing to me. And for me to watch that now, I still thought it was like very eerie.
Yeah,
Definitely a great movie.
There's a huge difference between like these movies, like, we're going to go to The Exorcist next. I don't want to jump ahead too much, but there's a big difference between how your audience and how the Catholic Church is going to perceive a movie in one where Satan wins and in the other where Satan loses.
Yeah.
Two movies that are similar in a sense, but have vastly different endings.
That's a good point.
Christians, religious people might love one and hate the other just because of how it ends.
Wow. I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But yeah, like you said, we're going to move on to The Exorcist, which is absolutely wild. 1973. Again, this is like the first time that I watched it from sit down beginning to end. It's always one of the movies that's been on where you could just watch clips of it, but absolutely insane. The synopsis: one of the most profitable horror movies ever made, this tale of an exorcism is based loosely on actual events. When young Regan, Stark's acting odd, levitating, speaking in tongues, her worried mother seeks medical help only to hit a dead end. A local priest, however, thinks this girl may be seized by the devil. The priest makes a request request to perform an exorcism, and the church sends in an expert to help with the difficult job. Rotten Tomatoes score 84 for critic,
Yep.
and then 87 for audience. I was surprised. I thought it was going to be a little bit higher.
Yep, me too. That's definitely low in my opinion. The Letterboxd average is 4 out of 5. I would give this a 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
But yeah, 84, especially for critic, that's kind of low.
I definitely thought it would be more, just because I feel like this. I mean, it's not a cult classic really, because it was like, a big deal, but
right, mainstream.
It was mainstream, but it was still like one of the movies that are like, still held up on that pedestal that has even become even more of a cult classic.
I mean, it, broke award grounds too. It was the first horror film to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. It was nominated 10 times actually.
Yeah, that's wild.
It won Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Sound Editing, I think. Yeah, so.
Yeah, because it was dubbed the whole time, basically.
Yeah.
That's interesting to think about that, because Linda Blair, I think she was like 12 or 13. It was just like a wild scene. Very, very bizarre. And she was it was crazy to think that like she could, just kind of slip into that.
Yeah.
And
It's not funny. Funny probably isn't the right word. The difference between making a movie, in 73 and, and now 50-year difference between like how children were probably treated, back then it was they probably weren't as protective as the kids. You know what I mean? Back then it was, there was definitely stuff they didn't use her for that they used doubles for.
Yeah.
But she knew what was going on. Yeah.
Like what?
Like the spider walk down the steps. That was someone else. What out there? I think like the crotch stabbing scene was someone else.
Yeah,
like,
super heavy.
Yeah, there were certain things that they were like, we're gonna use like a double for this. But she definitely, she knew she was making a movie about being possessed by a demon, obviously. Yeah,
like you were telling me about that documentary Leap of Faith, and like I didn't get to watch that yet, but I wanted to, because I want to see like all the inside of it all. Like you were talking about how there's like, scenes of the director like laughing, talking about filming, and like,
yeah, just like the biggest difference is like things that they couldn't get away with now, like shooting a gun off behind Father Karras's head when he's listening to those tapes backwards, listening to her speaking backwards.
No one. I have no one. Fear the priest. Fear the priest. Aaron. Leo, I have no one. Fear the priest.
Yeah, that
still
cell phone
spooked
ring.
me.
Yeah, but William Friedkin just snuck up behind him and shot a gun off beside his head to like kind of evoke that actual jump from him.
Yeah, that's wild to think about that.
No one's gonna do that nowadays.
Yeah, I guess so. That's true. I mean, I think we can come to a conclusion that like a lot of quotes from these old horror movies could be like super mean metal breakdowns, like "Fear the priest, fear the priest," wild shit like that. But I don't know. And like you were talking about, I don't know who brought up these facts between you or Dan, but talking about the lady who played the devil's voice.
Oh yeah, I can't remember her name, but yeah, she would just like drink a ton.
They said she broke her sobriety, right?
Yep.
To get that like devilish, like raspy.
Yeah, she would just like, eat like raw eggs, drink a ton of alcohol, smoke a bunch of cigarettes, just to try and make it sound as like gnarly as she could.
Definitely weird. I had questions about this because, did the devil go into Reagan because she was playing with the Ouija board?
Yeah, so the devil's plan the whole time was to get to Marin. Marin is the exorcist. The movie's about Marin, even though he's only in it first scene and the last scene, really. But yeah, I mean, he's the one who, Pazuzu was unearthed at the beginning from the dig site that Marin was at. Yeah. And the whole time, I think, was just like that was, Pazuzu was looking for a way to get to Marin, which it did at the end, through Reagan, through Karras, to Marin.
But how did how did the devil know that if he went into Reagan, he would get to Karis, and Karis would get to this other priest that might be the one that unlocked him?
I think it's just one of the
movie things.
It's just movie magic. You got to suspend disbelief a little, but also I think, if this demon is all knowing, it knows that Karis is struggling with his faith.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The demon knows that Karis isn't going to be able to do this exorcist by himself, and that he's going to ask for help, and that Marin being, who everybody talks about in this movie, when it gets to that point where he's like, we ought to do this exorcist.
Yeah.
And the two bishops are like,
he's like, I know a guy.
Apparently this Marin guy is like this within the Catholic community. He's like this, he's the exorcist.
Yeah.
So it's like, this demon knew that it was going to be Marin when it got to this point.
It was, her makeup was so wild, I kept focusing on her lips, the whole time. They looked like so chapped and like cracked and broken.
Yep.
And, I thought that was wild. I loved how witty the devil was, immediately, you might undo these straps.
Yep.
Or you might loosen these straps or something. And I thought that was funny that there was still I guess lighthearted is the wrong term to use, but
but it's like at the same time, this demon didn't want to showcase all its powers right off the bat.
I noticed that because he was like, if you're the devil, why can't you make these straps disappear? And he goes, that's a crude representation or a crude exploitation of power or something along the lines.
Asks it, if my mother's in there with you, what's my mother's maiden name? Doesn't answer.
Yeah.
There's certain things that kind of keep you in disbelief, but also kind of back up Karis's belief, which is that this isn't a possession.
Well, then it's weird whenever he was whenever Karis first went in and went to spray holy water on her, and it ended up just being tap water that he said was holy water.
Right.
That's if he's the devil and he's supposed to be all knowing, how didn't he know that was a trick? It was weird. Some things were weird about it. Some things I didn't really understand, but I thought it was great. And especially for, being from 73 to now, that's literally 51 years. It's just insane to think about that. Or no, 49 years
tomorrow or next year. Next year's 50.
49 years. But I just told Nazo to watch it. I've been telling him over and over, and he just texted me. He said, you got me watching this long drawn ass out movie. I'm like, get out of here. I watched it, and me and Antoinette were both this is insane. Yeah, definitely wild. The music was insane. Was there any stupid moments for you in that movie?
So I think it depends on what cut you watch. If you watch the director's cut,
how much longer is it?
It's not that much longer. I think the one or two of the hospital scenes are a little bit longer.
Okay.
And I think that my biggest problem with this movie, it's, I still would say it's a 5 out of 5. It is near perfect. Is the escalation from Reagan to, not possessed to possessed does happen a little too quickly.
Yeah, real quick. She's just chilling and then she's whacking herself off the bed.
So that does happen a little fast. But I mean, other than that, that's really the only, some of the things they say are silly, but.
One of the things is did they ever explain where the name Captain Howdy came from?
No.
It's that's so random and just
right.
Just weird, oh, this is Captain Howdy. It's was that something that she made up? Was that something the devil told her? That's strange.
I guess it could be either or. It could be, they know that they're talking to a child.
Yeah, disarming.
Right.
Yeah, that's it's wild to think about that.
The only easier to tell a child your name's Howdy than Pazuzu.
Yeah, I guess so. The only thing I thought was ridiculous is some of the effects I understand were supposed to be extreme and shocking.
Right.
But whenever she's smacking her body off the bed over and over and over again, whenever she was still Reagan before she got completely possessed, I thought was ridiculous. I thought it was ridiculous.
She's Mother,
help please
me.
Stop it.
Yeah.
But you said she broke her back when that happened.
Yeah, because the board that she was strapped to, which was controlled by a mechanical arm, the straps came loose. So instead of her moving with the board smacked up against her back. Yeah.
How long does something like that take to to make? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea. I mean, that whole set, because it had to be refrigerated too, so the bedroom specifically was done like in a refrigeration.
Oh, so you could see your breath.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit.
Yep.
I didn't think about that.
So that whole bedroom had to be done in like a refrigerated, set.
Wow. It would probably be such like a weird thing to act that and like have it all dubbed over later. You know what I mean? Like, have whenever Karis is talking to her the first time to see if she's really possessed or not, and she's like having all these conversations. Obviously, she has to know the script to be able to mouth the words,
right.
But he's just having this conversation with a little girl. It's like, it got to be kind of weird to like,
Yeah, because the voice isn't, what he's hearing as an actor is not what the audience is hearing.
Yeah, strange for sure. But it looked great. Like, everything looked cool about it. There was really not too many like breaks in like, audio versus, how her mouth was moving. But overall, fantastic. But I had, notes on there is like the dialogue from the devil has to be the best for sure. Mm-hmm. Like it was funny. It was very scary. He started to get crazy. He could be light, but I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was great. All right. Third one on our list, your personal favorite, huh? Yeah. Halloween 1978. On a cold Halloween night in 1963, 6-year-old Michael Myers brutally murdered his 17-year-old sister Judith. He was sentenced and locked away for 15 years. But on October 30th, 1978, while being transferred for a court date, a 21-year-old Michael Myers steals a cop car and escapes Smith's Grove. He returns to his quiet hometown of Haddonfield, Illinois, where he looks for his next victims. So, first thing, 21 years old. I never really even like conceptualized how old Michael Myers was, or, I think that's the last thing you think about in those movies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like 21 years old.
I mean, well, it's you don't see his face until like the very end of the film. So it could be any age, really.
I mean,
you're just looking at a mask.
He just looks like a grown ass WWE wrestler. You know what I mean? Just big as hell. Like, how old was that dude who played him?
I don't know. I think he was like
6'4" or something.
But like, but he wasn't like that big.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just is also.
I mean, he's not like the Rob Zombie remake. That dude was like 6'8" or something.
Yeah, that's true too. That's pretty wild. Rotten Tomatoes score 96.
Yep.
And the audience score was an 89. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's fitting, right?
Yeah.
It's considered to be one of the best of all time.
Right.
And obviously you agree with that?
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I think it is the best slasher of all time, in my opinion. I know we're going to differ on that, but yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to like recognize any other slasher without like saying, or paying respect to Halloween.
Yeah.
It did lay the groundwork. It has that, the formula that every slasher copies, it was basically done first by Halloween. They basically created that formula, the high school kids, the virgin, the slutty friends, that are going to get killed. Obviously it's like that whole, everybody just went on to copy that.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again, still to this day. It's just like there were slashers that came before, you have Psycho, Black Christmas, even you could say Texas Chainsaw is kind of slasher. But none of them like really kind of created that like perfect formula
where they hone in on it.
How cheap can we make this and how much money we can make off of it?
How much money did they make it for?
So it was like 300,000 was what they made it for. And then it grossed over 47 million.
Like how long? Like how long is that?
I don't know what period of time that is. I don't know if that's like the first year. I'm not sure, but
it's not like all time. All time, it's like billions of dollars.
Yeah.
But 43 million back then is probably pretty crazy for a low budget slasher.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I guess it wouldn't even be called a slasher, a low budget horror film.
Right.
Now, Jamie Lee Curtis, this wasn't her first movie, right?
Yeah. It was.
She didn't have as kids. I thought she was a kid in a movie.
No. This has the the introducing Jamie Lee Curtis card at the beginning.
That's right. That's pretty wild.
Yep.
Very weird. You said that this was shot in the summertime in California,
Right.
which was weird to think about because the whole time it obviously looks like, you know, fall in Chicago or fall in Illinois, fall in Chicago, fall in Haddonfield.
Yep.
But I thought that was cool too to hear about like the, you know, the weird shit where they had to like transport leaves all over the place to film and, you know, trying to find pumpkins in June. And,
Yeah, I mean, if you really watch close, you're going to see palm trees in the background of certain scenes. So,
do you think that, like, I mean, I would never ever recognize that, I don't think. You know, do you recognize that, or do you just know that because of reading things?
no, I think I've just seen it so many times that, you know, sometimes your eyes start to wander around the screen because you've seen it enough times and now you're looking at things you don't normally look at.
That's fair.
You know, you're picking up on things. Sometimes it's, you know, you're picking up on things like mistakes as well, you know, where you can see a camera guy in a shot, or you can see like, you know, things like that. If
That's
you watch
true.
something enough times, you're going to, you know, realize like, oh, I've never seen this before.
That's fair. When's the first time you watched this?
Middle school. I don't remember what age exactly, but it was definitely like middle school, somewhere between 6th to 8th grade.
Do you remember being scared?
No, I don't think I was scared really. It was like, I watched it on AMC on TV.
Yeah.
You know, because they always had like Halloween marathons and they always played Halloween. And it was just one that was like, I think everybody always knew it was on TV. Everybody knew about it. And, you know, just watched it one night, just left the channel on and watched it. I didn't really start getting like super into it, you know, until probably like after high school. You know?
I didn't even watch it until we did that first Halloween movie episode a couple years ago. It's
Yeah.
just one that like I never really just watched. It was like, you know, just like Rosemary's Baby, like a classic movie that, I mean, same thing with The Exorcist. It's like just movies I knew that were like great movies, just never got around to watching it. But of course I watched Halloween H2O, Halloween Resurrection, you know, all the real hitters. But those are like the first times I remember like knowing who Michael Myers was. Is I think whenever like H2O came out, because I remember my brother watched it and I sat in and, you know, scared the shit out of me. But other than that, like I don't really remember.
H2O is also like unique in the sense that H2O is post Scream slasher. You know, Scream copied a lot of the stuff that the slashers were doing before it, but it did it intentionally. You know, Scream is like, I don't want to say making fun of slashers, but it kind of is in a way. It's,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Exposing-
it's very meta. It's very like, you know,
Yeah, that's a
they
good
don't-
way to put
it's
it.
talking about slashers in a slasher movie.
Yeah,
you know, it's
naming the rules and
right.
everything.
You know, it's like calling a zombie. You know, it doesn't happen.
That's great to say. Yeah.
It's kind of like the same thing.
Is there any zombie movies that say that call them zombies?
Shaun of the Dead, maybe? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe even they don't use that in there or something. Who knows? But
But it's the same kind of thing. You know, Scream was like a slasher that talked about slashers in it.
yeah,
And H2O, you know, Scream was what, 98,
98, I think?
I think it was 96 because H2O was 98.
oh yeah, that makes sense.
And that you could definitely see a lot of Scream influence in H2O. Just the styling of it, you know?
Yeah, and the way it's filmed too.
Right.
Probably they were all them like older movies like that were like all that whole time period. They were all filmed the same way.
Right.
You know, like I Know What You Did Last Summer. All that. You had the same feel while you
Yeah.
were watching. They were the formula. They were
Yep.
working with the formula.
Yep.
But yeah, Michael Myers never really like scared me that much. I remember thinking like, you know, it was scary that like he was always there. He always found a way to be there, but it was never like something that I was like mortified by. Like I had friends that were terrified of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I never really like got that idea of it.
Yeah, it's different because he's just a guy. You know, they don't really start setting up any of the mythology around him until like the sequels. You know, like John Carpenter's vision was this is just a guy. This could be any guy in any neighborhood, in any city. It could just be a guy that's stalking people and killing them for no reason.
But could it?
I saw the boogeyman. I saw him outside.
There was nobody outside.
There was
What did he look like?
the boogeyman.
No, I mean, like, it's definitely, I remember you saying that, like, this did, like, the first account of, like, bringing it home, like bringing it like into like the hometown where it was like a small town vibe where it's like everyone feels safe, you know, you leave your doors unlocked and everything like that.
Yeah, it wasn't like, you know, like let's compare it to the previous two we just talked about, like The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
It's not like Rosemary's Baby where all of the neighbors are Satanists, you know. All the neighbors in Halloween are just normal people. You know, it's not like The Exorcist where the whole thing takes place basically in around one bedroom where there's one possessed girl in there. You know, you don't really see what's going on in the outside world. And yes, there are some establishing and there are some exterior shots in The Exorcist, but most of the hardcore scenes are happening in a
around
bedroom.
the bed. Yeah.
Halloween does a lot of exterior shots showing you that this is just a normal neighborhood, but he's still behind
Covering
that tree.
ground.
He's still behind that tree over there.
Whenever you're not looking, he's just sprinting to the next tree, breathing like, and then just walking out real slow. Yeah, I don't know. Michael Myers is weird. There's too many things about. There's too many things about, like, you know, I'm all for movie magic, but there's too many things that I can't just like get on board with. Like, how many times could the dude get shot by a 357? Yeah, I get it. Like, he's somewhat demonic and like, you know, but I don't know. It's just, it gets tired for me. I know that, you know, they make 47 new ones.
Yeah. So you're talking like, if you start getting to the sequels, yeah, it gets a little ridiculous. But
the first one's ridiculous too. He gets shots how many times?
Yeah, but that's the very end of it's not like he gets shot 6 times as soon as the movie starts and goes on killing. He gets shot at the very end.
Touche. That's fair.
And then he just disappears right before credits roll. You know?
And then you're like, I guess back then it's eerie.
Is he alive? Is he dead?
I know. I'm spoiled now because I know that there's 65 of these movies and they just keep getting worse. But I don't know. It was weird. It's funny because I asked a poll on Instagram. I said, you know, if you were in a Halloween movie, could you beat Michael Myers' ass? And the poll was funny because there were 77 total answers. And I would think the majority of people would have said yes, but they didn't. I had 47 people say, absolutely not, I would be the first to die. And then 30 people said, yes, I would beat the shit out of him. But where do you fall on that?
To be honest, it's hard to say. You know, we have are we in universe or are we out of universe? If we're out of universe, we have all the slasher knowledge. We know, like, you know, if we're in universe, then we're probably going to die. But if it's just like this day and age with everything we know now, if it's like Scream universe where we know the rules.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, I'm talking about like if it happened right now, like if this was happening to us right now.
Then it's just a fight, you know. Then it's just a fist fight.
Exactly.
Can this guy overpower you? Is
And
really what it
does
comes
that dude
down to.
have a carry permit like I do? like does that dude have that? It's like I don't know.
That's what I think is like scary and that's one of the reasons why I hate Terrifier is, you know, Michael Myers doesn't use a gun. Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, they don't use guns. Not to get off subject, but Terrifier, he pulls out, this girl's whooping his ass in Terrifier, and he pulls out a gun and shoots her because he's losing. Like, the thing that makes these people scary is they're getting up close and personal. They're like overpowering you, but like, yeah, I don't know.
They always find a way.
The reason these people were all dying in the original was they were just like horny teens who were just unaware. They were so preoccupied with whatever else was going on in their lives, which was, you know, trying to get laid or whatever, that they didn't realize they were being watched. They didn't see anybody watching. They didn't see this guy coming into the house. The reason why Laurie survived was because she was
observant,
not preoccupied. She was aware.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that really. Because as a teen, you know, you're just, that's what you're really thinking about. You're not worried about other shit.
You know, you want to get laid, you know.
Yeah.
There's a guy watching from across the street. You're not going to notice that if you're trying to, you know, just sneak into someone's house.
That's a fair point. Was there any sort of like hate or anything against this whenever it came out? Was it like ever like poorly reviewed or anything, or did it immediately just take off?
I think it just immediately took off. Even like Roger Ebert, you know, famous critic, pretty sure gave it like 4 out of 4 stars, like when it came out.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't like one that he went back and revised later and was like, okay, I'm going to up it from 2 to 4. It was one of those ones that was just like, I think initially loved upon release. You know, it was a slow takeoff, you know, kind of like a lot of independent films these days, because it was an independent film.
Yeah.
That depending on how well it's doing in the 100 theaters it was released in, that will determine if the studio is going to send it to 100 more, and then 200 more, and then 500 more. It's just a slow rollout is what it was.
How many total Halloweens are there now?
Was there I can't remember if Ends was 13 or 14.
Around there.
I can't remember if I'm counting the Rob Zombie remakes either, but
now whenever you do, whenever they put this out in 78, like how many years between the next one did it come out?
So Halloween 2 came out in 81.
So 3 years.
Yep.
And I assume that had a crazy budget, and like, you know, how did all that kind of play out?
Yeah. So, I mean, John Carpenter didn't want to do it. Him and Deborah Hill, like, both didn't want to do it. You know, their
Who's
idea.
Deborah Hill?
She was a co-writer.
Okay.
She basically wrote the movie with John Carpenter. She wrote all of the, you know, one of the things that a lot of people praise the movie for is that it sounds authentic. Like the conversations between all the girls sound authentic. Well, it was written by, you know, a woman who was like, you know, a little older than them, but still around somewhere around their age. But they didn't want to do it. You know, the studio, I think it was just like a money talks kind of thing. You know,
they were trying to get them to make another one.
Yeah. You know, and I know he didn't want to do it, but he did it.
And how many did he do?
He always kind of jokes, you know, that he wrote Halloween 2 over like a, you know, 6-pack of Budweiser one night or like something like, as far as how many he's involved with, technically he's involved some way, shape, or form with almost all of them, either like because they have to credit him because they reuse the theme song, because they have to credit him because he created the characters. You know, like a lot of times you'll see like based on characters created by, things like that. So, I mean, they could keep making them and he could also have nothing to do with them, but he's still going to get paid.
Because that's his IP.
It's his character.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting. I guess he's in a, you know, he just gets paid for everything that
he did, you know, write the scores too for the new Blumhouse trilogy that came out. He wrote, you know, all the scores.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So John Carpenter also wrote the Halloween theme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess so. Huh?
Yeah. 3 days. He scored the whole movie in 3 days. They did a screening of it with no music, and the producers were like, "What the fuck is this? This isn't scary."
It's weird because that movie, or the music is like all the music of all these movies is like pretty wild, whether it be Tubular Bells or like that la 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 from Rosemary's Baby, or, you know, the Halloween theme. It's like all very eerie. And we were talking about this before, but you know, like the way things are shot and like what they were able to utilize with what they had to make work.
Right.
And, you know, music was such like an interesting part because it's like, that was like one of the big things that they had to, you know, make it work for the movie. Cause like, you don't have like, you know, the effects that you have now, or, you know, like really anything that you could use that is used in like modern day, really. You know what I mean? Like they were doing all these filmings with like, you know, leaving it all up to our minds. Like there really wasn't a lot of gore in Michael Myers and Halloween. And I don't know, it's wild to think about that now, because now there's all kinds of like,
this was one of the topics I was going to talk about.
Look at that. We're on the same wavelength.
Outside of these movies, is that what the future of horror is, because that's what today's youth wants. You know, you could show The Exorcist to like a 16-year-old today. They're probably going to think it's stupid.
Yeah. Like Jared Nazo.
But they're going to be like obsessed with like Terrifier, Terrifier 2, which is literally no plot, just gory kill after gory kill after, you know, is that like what horror is coming to?
Yeah. It's like you need to have that. That's
like
another
stepping it up and up and
that's
up.
another part of the equation now. You know, the formula is what it was, but now you need to add the horror into that.
Right.
You know, and like, I don't know, I guess like, you know, I favor that. I like all the weird horror shit. Like I like all that like bloody and the over the top and Saw and everything. But it's like, I also love the psychological stuff way more, because even like random movies, like this has nothing to do with like the horror. I guess it is kind of a horror movie, but The Gray is like one of the most perfect endings to me, because it like leaves you completely open. The dude probably gets eaten by a wolf, but like it just like, you know, that was like one of the first ones that I remember watching where it gave you no answer, and it like baffled me, you know, just completely baffled me. I was like, I cannot believe it. But I like it now. You know, whenever I was younger, I used to like, you know, think that it was just like dumb that they didn't just lay the answer out in front of you. But
Yeah.
in my later years, I love being able to like kind of like that quote whenever we were talking about Rosemary's Baby, like there's nothing that's going to be more terrifying than what you could build in your mind.
Right.
And that's pretty
And
wild to think
that's
about.
Touching back again on that thing that you just said about not showing the baby. They do show Michael Myers' face at the end of Halloween.
Yeah.
Laurie like pulls his mask off when he's trying to choke her. And they show his face for a second, and it is outside of his eye. They put like some makeup on his eye because she had poked him in the eye.
Yeah.
Outside of that, he's a totally normal looking guy. But people always say, or at least they said back then, 40 years ago, and this was, I think, a quote from John Carpenter. He said people would come up to him and be like, man, that when Michael Myers' mask comes off, like that guy is hideous.
I was
And
just kind of
laugh. He would kind of laugh to himself because he's like, it's just the power of perception. It's like the power of suggestion where he's suggested to be this like really awful guy. You're just going to, even though you see his face, you're assuming he looks worse than he does.
I was just going to ask you, it wasn't his face like kind of deformed in the first one?
No, not at all. His eye was like, they did something with his eyelid.
Yeah, it's like almost like they had like some latex like pulling it down a little bit.
But that was it. The rest of his face was normal.
Oh, that's interesting to think about.
But it's just like the power of suggestion, like where
Yeah.
it's suggested that he's obviously this bad guy who's been killing. People are going to think that he looks ugly or looks
like
worse than he
ugly,
does.
something like that, like Jason.
Right.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. Now, when did like because obviously there's like Halloween or there's Michael Myers, then there's Jason Voorhees is like the next like kind of big slasher, and then like Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. Was Jason Voorhees first, right?
So like talking about like ripoffs.
No, not really ripoffs,
oh.
but like the next slasher of that was like when did that come out after?
So Friday the 13th was 1980. So
okay, so 2 years
later.
Oh, okay.
Basically 1 year later, because even though Halloween came out in 78,
it was the end of 78.
It was like the wide release went into like 79. So
okay, that's interesting. Do you know offhand if like Friday the 13th, did that have like a negative? Was that like was that like taken in on a negative review because it was like almost like trying to
So to be honest, I really don't know a lot about Friday the 13th. I've seen all of them, but like I'm not sure on like things like that. Like
you
how
watched
it
them
was
all?
received. I've seen all of them. Yeah.
I think the only ones I saw were like the new remakes.
Yeah,
I don't know if I've ever seen the original.
Bought, they just released a box set like 2 years ago of like all of them. I bought it, watched them all.
Are they great?
I mean, it's the same. It's the same. Any franchise that goes on that long is going to start to suck. I mean,
like the first one was good, second one was all right, and then they start to go down.
I mean, I even like the first 4, but then after that,
how many are there?
I think there's like 10, maybe.
Yeah, not as many as Halloween.
Yeah, no, I think there's more Halloweens now, especially after the new ones. But Friday the 13th he goes to Manhattan, he goes to space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
same
he
thing
goes
with,
to hell.
Same thing with that's a good point. That's weird.
It's like The Simpsons. It's like, but with a slasher character. Like, where can we send him? Like, what? Send him to space.
Yeah,
freeze him. Yeah, like freeze him and wake him up in 2,000 years in space.
Yeah, that was such a weird. Movie. But that goes to show you about like what people could gravitate towards. Like they just love the culture of that character,
right? And it's
like a comic book.
It's a huge difference too between like Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees. Is Michael Myers in Halloween movies, they're always on Halloween, always like in Haddonfield.
Yeah, realistic, it's, I mean, for what it is to an extent, but the other things kind of have that like freedom to go, a little bit beyond.
Right.
Which is, that's pretty interesting. I never really thought about that. But all right, next movie, which is, I'm excited to talk about this, The Strangers, 2008.
Yep.
It's been, I don't know the last time I watched this, probably whenever it came out. It had to be, because I didn't remember really any of it. I remember the ending, but I didn't really remember any of it on the inside. And so The Strangers, Kristen and James are expecting a relaxing weekend at a vacation home, but their stay turns out to be anything but peaceful. First, a mysterious and dangerous woman arrives at the door while James is out on an errand. When he returns, he accidentally kills his friend Mike, mistaking him for an intruder, and then the real danger shows up in the form of 3 mass tortures, leaving Kristen and James struggling for survival. Now, I have to say, that synopsis sounds not the best because it's not right.
It also kind of gives away a lot too. Like he's going to kill his best friend with a shotgun.
That was so random. That's what I was saying. And like whenever he said, this dangerous woman arrives while the dude is out on an errand, he was there whenever she arrived in the beginning. But Rotten Tomatoes score, critics were 48 and audience was 48, which is I was very surprised about. I thought it would be higher by the audience. I really thought it would have been like 70s or something by the audience because I thought it was a fantastic movie. There was dumbass shit that I picked out the whole time, but in a whole, it was like a menacing, terrifying movie because I was trying to I was just trying to like put myself in that position, and I am terrified of the dark basically. And this is scarier than any of the movies that we've mentioned, in my personal opinion, because whenever we talk about, you and I differ on the perfect slasher film because you love Halloween. I just talked about on how I hate, these like how he could die 50 times and just come back. I love, my personal favorite slasher is Scream because, it's just real. Like that could really happen. A psycho kid who gets crazy about his girlfriend and his best friend's involved, and like that type of shit could happen because, they die and then you got people that are, trying to pay homage to him. And like, that's just personally how I find my fear is like, what's real? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, so you didn't agree with this score?
Like the 48%?
Yeah.
It makes sense. If you really break down,
it makes sense.
Rotten Tomatoes, it doesn't mean that it's 48% good. It means 48% of the people that review it liked it,
Yeah, that means over half the people did not like it.
Yeah, I think let's just round it. Let's just say it's 50%. 50% did like it, 50% didn't. I agree with that. I can see why it would be that. Letterboxd, it was 3 out of 5 on average.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Liv Tyler in here, which, she's not in that many movies. No. She's really not in that many movies. She was a great actress in this.
She's in this, in Armageddon. And
Lord of the Rings, this in Armageddon. She did have a very Armageddon scene in this where she was like sitting with her hand like just on her cheek, like just looking all sad. And like, it was very Armageddon feeling, but I don't know. It's been forever since I watched this. Me and Antoinette sat down and we watched this last night, and it was just like menacing. And I remember that it was like these random people showing up, but this movie did something that I thought Halloween did not. And the reason I say that in that way is because you said you read on Letterboxd a couple paragraphs about how this movie was trying to be Halloween but failing.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
They were just comparing like the atmosphere and how they were essentially saying that Halloween was more believable. I know you'll disagree, but they're saying Halloween's more believable because how often are you going to find yourself in a cabin in the middle of the woods on the end of a road with no other houses around, no other people around? Like, they're basically saying like you're going to find yourself in the Halloween situation every day of your life where you're just at your house in a neighborhood, but you're rarely going to find yourself in the middle of nowhere with no one around.
Now, let me tell you that. So on top of that, I saw that they were making a remake of this, and the plot line is a couple breaks down and they have to stay in an Airbnb. And that's more, that's realistic. They're making movies now where people are getting murdered in Airbnbs, and anytime I stay in one, I'm ready to go. You know what I mean? Because I know some weird shits, could be afoot. But in this movie, I thought it was just like, first of all, the poor bastard was about to propose. It did not go his way. And like this,
that was actually one of my negatives. Not that idea.
Yeah.
They didn't need to show the flashback to the him like proposing or whatever. Like, I think enough was implied by them pulling up to the house, not talking. It showed her crying. They went inside. They weren't talking to each other. I think it was kind of implied
I don't know, though.
Something happened.
I don't know, though, because I get what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
And the opening card or whatever said that they were at a wedding. that creepy voice that's like, based on true words.
Yeah, I guess so.
It basically set it up and said like, on the night of blah, 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 on the way home from the wedding.
Yeah, what a funny voice that was.
But it's creepy. It was creepy.
It was creepy. I thought it was Samuel L. Jackson at first. Lawrence Fishburne at first. But one of the things, another metal breakdown is like the 911 call of them kids calling.
Yeah.
It kind of didn't it didn't line up with the way that they saw the people at the end.
Yeah, I that can be done. That, I don't know what you would even call it. That the reveal at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Right before the movie starts, where they kind of show you like, this is how it ends.
Yeah.
Now we're going to show you the movie. I don't know if this was the right film to try that in. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it added to it. Like, I feel like it didn't really add to it. If anything, like it just, I guess it spurred some curiosity of like what was happening, but
which it almost feels like it's like used in the wrong way.
Yeah. I could agree with that for sure. I know what you're saying. But at the end of that kid's phone call, he was like, there's blood everywhere. There's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
And that would be a sick metal breakdown. Like all these movies have a real sick metal breakdown. But like, I don't know. This movie was wild to me because like, I thought that like, like I said before, it was menacing. Like it was weird to me that like you just randomly, like at first off, he gets a knock at the door and he goes, what is it, 4 a.m.? And it's like, if anyone's at my door at 4 a.m., I'm cocked and locked, ready to rock. You know what I mean? Like who's knocking at 4 a.m.?
Right.
And if you're broke down, I'll give you a fucking camp chair to sit out in my front yard and a blanket to wrap up in, but you ain't coming in my house.
Yep.
You could fucking sleep in the car or something. I'd rather that person sleep in my car than sleep in my home. But you're just like, all right, that's creepy, right?
Yeah.
But that's still realistic,
for the time.
For the time.
One of the first things I notated on here was everybody has a Ring doorbell these days.
Yeah, that's fair.
That for the time, definitely realistic. Today, you hear that, that knocking at your front door.
That's
Most
fair.
people are pulling out their phone like, who's on the doorbell?
Oh, yeah. And
They
you
could still,
talk, yeah, but you could talk to it on the phone. That's
Right.
true. That's interesting.
Yep.
I didn't think about that. This door didn't have a peephole on it.
Nope.
And
no glass on the sides.
No glass, but, looked like a structural door until the dude started coming in with an axe and it was
Shining
like,
reference.
Yeah, but it was just like, I don't know, some things, like, to be devil's advocate, like, I try to pick out the things that I thought were stupid.
Yeah.
And, like, the whole movie falls apart right there after that, like, creepy bitch leaves in the beginning. And she's like, oh, I don't have cigarettes. And he's like, oh, I'll run out and grab you some at 4 a.m. after some creepy-ass person knocks on the door.
Yeah.
You're like, come on, bro. It's like, right then and there, I'm like, that movie, you should get it. It should be taken away. Like, how all the good that I had about it needs to be taken away. But then, like it starts to ramp up because like if you're alone in a house and you're hearing fucking banging and like, I would be terrified.
Yeah.
I'm a 280 pound dude that's like, I feel able bodied. I would be freaking out.
Yeah.
Knives immediately, just like, immediately locking shit.
Yep.
But I don't know. I thought it was wild. What did you think, like, whenever you watched it all the way through first?
When I just watched it last night, I think it was like the third or fourth time I've seen it. It doesn't have a lot of rewatchability because what's coming next.
Yeah.
It's a movie that relies a lot on jump scares.
Yeah.
And like, I have nothing against jump scares, but when there's nothing to back up the jump scare, and that's just like, that's what's going to get you. You already know what's coming. You already know, like, and to be honest, the scariest thing in this whole movie isn't even a jump scare. It's literally when she walks into the kitchen and he's in the house just watching her, the sackhead guy.
Yeah.
Behind that shot right there.
That was scary.
That's probably the creepiest shot in the whole movie. Like, it's just that fact that he's in the house already.
Yeah, but it's just like, you were just saying that, like, you said there's not a lot of like rewatchability and stuff like that because it doesn't like have, build up for them jump scares. But like, so I was noticing this. I was watching this with subtitles. I watch everything with subtitles and mine's like a second too soon. So it'll say like bang. And then like a split second later, it bangs on the door.
Yeah.
So it takes away my jump scares.
Yeah.
But, I noticed that and I was watching like how much that would affect if I was watching it in the theater because I couldn't remember it. And like, I don't know. And knowing how it ends, it kind of takes away all that, like, it kind of cuts that tension out almost. But as I was watching,
oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. But you were saying like it doesn't like ever go through to have that jump scare. Like kind of just like you'll have that thud and you think something crazy's happening. But like I like that slow burn of it all because it like you just never know when it is really going to happen.
Right.
You know, just keep doing it.
There's something between, but there's a huge difference between suspecting the scare is coming and knowing the scare is coming. Like when she like starts to just open the drapes a little bit with a knife
and sees him
and then backs off. And then she's like, fuck it, I'm opening them. And she rips it open and he's right there.
Yeah.
There's a difference between suspecting that's coming and knowing it's coming. Knowing that is going to happen, it takes away from it, I think. Suspecting that it's going to happen, you're still really scared.
That's fair.
Knowing that is about to happen, it takes it away, I think.
That's fair. It's also weird to think about a time where people just didn't have cell phones like this, and like she had that flip phone that was just
I gotta charge my battery.
Yeah. This is one that takes like 15 minutes to turn on, and you're just like, I don't know. It's just a wild time. The scariest part. If you were her and you came back into that room and you just saw that fire alarm sitting on a chair, I'd be like, get out of here. But then, this idiot, Scott Speedman, comes in and he's the dumbest part of the movie. I wish he would have just got killed immediately because, he comes in and, they're fighting. They're like, we need a gun. And granted, I understand this dude could like think that she's crazy and like she might just be dreaming all this up. But, he gets this gun and he's like, oh, I don't even know how to use this thing.
Yeah.
And you're just like, come on, man. And then they have 30 shotgun shells that he finds. If you find a 12 gauge shotgun and 30 rounds and you figure out that it works, he knows it works because she gets it to work. He shoots through the door. And if you have a gun that works, I would literally just sit in a corner the whole night with that.
He tried to until he blows his friend's face off.
But he picks the stupidest part. You pick somewhere open. Why would you just do it like that? I don't know.
There was at the same time, like going back a couple seconds, if I'm one of the strangers, and I'm hacking away at this dude's front door with my axe, and that's all I have. I have an axe and like a knife, and all of a sudden the guy fucking blows through the front door with a shotgun. All right, next house. I'm leaving. Yeah. I'm giving up. I have an axe and a knife, and this dude just almost blew my head off through the front door with a shotgun.
Yeah, but they got higher ground because they obviously like know the layout of everything. Like the girl had a key to the house. She had a key to the house. So it meant that, I'm talking about the girl with the mask. Mm-hmm. She unlocked it. So it's like, obviously they were in there. Obviously they were looking through shit probably. They knew the layout of the house. They knew where to find stuff and they knew where to see people, where the vantage points were. And that's pretty crazy to think about too. But that whole, like the whole movie was just like menacing where it's like, you just don't know when shit's popping up. Right. And then, you got Mac from Always Sunny rolling in and just gets his head blown off.
I forgot. That was one thing I did forget about was
that was him.
Yeah. No, I knew that was him, but the whole scene with him like slowly investigating the house.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. I thought it just quickly cut to like him getting shot, but
another dumb thing where I'd be like, yo, I'd be yelling because what's the worst that could happen? You wake someone up.
Right.
It's like if something eerie's going on and the doors are open, I'd be banging pots and pans in there.
I think, that's just, that's movie magic right there. The guy was right behind him with an axe the whole time. And I think he was just kind of letting him be the guinea pig.
Yeah.
He was going to kill him with that axe.
For sure.
One
he was
way or
like,
the other.
Yeah, choking up on it, ready to go.
Yeah.
But it was, that's what makes these people scary. Like, these are the types of killers that are like the absolute most terrifying because they're literally just doing this to torture them mentally. They're playing with their food.
Yep.
And, I thought that was just like, really, 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 really weird. And then at the end, it's like the cherry on top, they're all like down and, the killers eventually come in and get them, which is, I don't know, another dumbass thing. The dude's like, just stay here. I'm going to go get to this radio back here.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, what are you doing? You're just leaving this chick alone the whole time. I don't know. I hated the guy in it.
Yeah.
That was everything I hated was him. But the scariest part at the end
Why are you doing this to us? Because you were home.
And you're just like, because you were home, it's like these people are just fucking nuts.
Yep.
And you're just like, Jesus. But then again, there's movie magic. How did these people know that they were going to be there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was trying to like dissect it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously no one had been in that house for
For a
while.
long time.
You know, she's running the bathwater, it's all rusty.
Yeah.
So obviously no one's been in that house for a while.
Yeah.
And another thing is this is their first kill. Because at the very end of the movie, as the truck's
Next time
driving
it'll
away,
be easier.
Yeah, so that leads you to believe this is the first time they've done it because they say that. Like, next time it's going to be easier.
I think she says next month it'll be easier. I don't know. Maybe I'm mishearing that, but I was like, that's like weird. But did they end up making like a second one?
I think it just came out like a couple years ago called like Strangers Pray at Night or something. Never saw it.
No. I think that there was a sequel to this back a few years ago, like a couple years after this original one came out, and then The Strangers Pray at Night came out. I don't know I didn't look anything about that.
Never seen them.
If that was going to be good or not. But what else was dumb with that? Antoinette had a nightmare last night. So we watched this movie, and you know, once it's done, she looks at me and she's like, I can't be fucking watching stuff like this right before we go to bed. Because, you know, she usually is like, she's all down to always watch like ghost stuff, like any paranormal, anything. But she's just like, I can't be watching people just killing people. And I start laughing because we wake up this morning and she was like, you think I didn't have a fucking nightmare last night about someone watching us outside? I did. And I thought that was funny because, like, you know, she usually don't get scared of stuff, but I thought it was a scary movie. I did. I thought it was a scary movie. I thought it was good. Thought it held up.
Has its moments.
Has its moments.
Has its moments.
I put myself in the scene. If anyone in the world is in that scene, you're fucking terrified. You know,
Yeah.
It's just terrifying. And the fact that it's only like 86 minutes or whatever is like, it was a shorter movie. You know, it did what it needed to do. But I like that they never showed their faces.
Yeah.
Masks were scary too.
Yep.
Definitely good.
Yeah.
Okay. Conjuring, the next one that came up, 2013. So, The Conjuring, I have to also say that The Strangers and The Conjuring, the reason that we added these to the list is because I did another poll on Instagram asking people some of their favorite horror movies, and these are probably the most commonly answered, and I was surprised by that because,
Yeah.
I mean, The Strangers for sure. I didn't expect a lot of people to like say that just because, like, I don't know, I don't really think of that as being like a favored horror movie that much.
It's definitely not going to be one that's going to come up on like a yearly rewatch. For me.
Yeah, and like a mainstream list or anything. It's weird, but The Conjuring definitely is one that I kind of always forget about. The first horror movie I took Antoinette to see, which I vowed that I was not going to see it because, like, you know,
Fucked up.
it was fucked up. You know, there was a peak time where I almost like slipped back into the Catholic religion, and I was like, you know, watching this like weird shit, and I was like, someone told me in real life once, they were like, the closer you get to God, the more the devil tries to come after you. Ooh. And I was like, Jesus, like, don't tell me that shit. But The Conjuring, in 1970, paranormal investigators and demonologists Lorraine and Ed Warren are summoned to the home of Carolyn and Roger Perron. The Perrons and their 5 daughters have recently moved into a secluded farmhouse where a supernatural presence has made itself known. Though the manifestations are relatively benign at the first of the story, events soon escalate in horrifying fashion, especially after the Warrens discover the house's macabre history. And a wild one. Do you remember? Do you remember like watching this and like your first thoughts of it?
Yeah, I remember. I saw it in theaters. I don't remember who I was with, but yeah, I mean, it freaked me out. I mean, it did a very good job. It's at what it was trying to do, which was a lot of, you know, had a lot of jump scares, but it had the quote unquote, you know, frightening imagery that went along with it.
That wasn't like poorly done.
Right.
You know,
No,
it was good.
Great effects.
Yeah,
you know,
it was.
Great effects. A lot of great practical effects too.
Now, before this one came out, was there another like possession movie that was like, you know, almost like an exorcism movie that you could like really think of that was like that like kind of held the title?
Like for everybody, you mean? Like this was like
yeah, I mean like I feel like
The Conjuring is one that The Conjuring and Hereditary, which we'll talk about in a little, are ones that always come up on people's like
this is like the millennials
scariest. Yeah.
This is like the millennials exorcist almost, so to speak.
Right.
But I don't know. It's like so the Rotten Tomato score 86% by critics, 83% by audience. I remember watching this and thinking, scared the shit out of me. Definitely was scary. But before that, the only other movies that I remember that like were demon type weird shit that kind of scared me was Paranormal Activity, because that was like kind of innovative in itself. And I don't know, like I said, I was like almost slipping back into a cult, so kind of scared the fuck out of me. But I don't know. And then this kind of came in, and it just was like a well done portrayal of what that story was in The Exorcist, kind of, right?
Another film that uses the based on true events card at the beginning. Do you think that is overused? Do you think it kind of takes away? It's trying to make you scared.
Well, now it is.
But it is now.
Because now anyone could just Google it on their phone. But back in like the 90s, whenever the Blair Witch was like, this is based on true events, no one's going to the library and, looking up like Blairsville or wherever the hell that was.
Right.
You just take it for what it's worth. But now you're like, is this though? Is this based on true events? Because like, if I see that in a movie now, I'm Googling it,
right?
Because I want to know if it's bullshit or not. Because if it's real, hell yeah, it's scary,
right?
But people do use that as something to try to like drum up some business, like that Watcher show that's on Netflix right now. That's a pile of shit. Ain't worth watching. Still number one on Netflix. But that's a perfect example. Based on true events. Terrible show.
Yep.
Neither here nor there. I digress.
But my first criticism is the Annabelle side plot, side story.
Like
unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like, that Annabelle has nothing to do. I get it's setting up like Ed and Lorraine's story, and like they're using that to kind of show who they are.
Yeah.
But they're also kind of just using it as like a
name drop
and a device to use later on in the film. Like, how can we take Ed and Lorraine away from the parents and bring them back to their house? Oh, their daughter is going to get into like their room of curiosities and the Annabelle doll is going to get out. It's almost like, what's the point? You know, what's the point of the Annabelle side plot?
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point.
That was the first thing, is like, I feel like you could get rid of that and the movie is still as good as it is. It's still the same film.
A perfect, gut feeling, so to speak, is the dog freaking out whenever they get there.
Yeah, it won't walk in the house. It just kind of hangs out at the front door.
You gotta trust that.
You know it's gonna die though. Anytime there's a dog in a horror movie,
terrible. Amityville Horror. That dog was getting beat to death with a hammer. Terrible. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The movie was terrifying because it's like it did a good job of building it. Built from like the lights going on and off, and then like the clapping near the ears. I don't know, it was terrifying.
Yeah. The one thing is, you were talking about like the clapping.
Yeah.
Hide and clap that they kept playing with the.
Yeah.
It's funny because the mom, I shouldn't say it's funny. The mom kept getting all these bruises. Like that's like the big thing, is she kept having all these like, where did these bruises come from?
Yeah.
But like the one scene she's playing hide and clap with their daughter, and she's like bumping into like this table, and she bumps into like the banister above the stairs, and like,
yeah, she was blacking out.
The door, like at one point she's going like whoever's down in the basement, I'm gonna lock you in. And the door slams shut, and she falls down the steps into the basement. Like, damn, no wonder she has all these bruises on her.
Clumsy
She's just
as hell.
Yeah, just clumsy.
But whenever they first show like the demon on top of that on top chest of drawers or whatever, the wardrobe, terrifying. I remember watching that in the theater, and I remember going, holy shit, like this is next level shit. And because I don't know, it's like a lot of the times I hate effects, you know, like I hate a lot of the effects that they use. Like, you know, we all know that I hated It. Maybe not all of us, but you know, the new It, like I don't want to, there's no reason to use these crazy effects. You know, give me some good prosthetics, some good makeup. That goes 1,000 times further than like some shitty CGI.
Yeah.
You know, that's my opinion on it.
Yeah.
But I think that they did a good job with like kind of like building that up and like just giving you a taste of that and then like taking it away again and then like adding some other weird shit. But definitely a good one. Was The Conjuring the first of Ed and Lorraine? That story?
Yeah, that was actually the one that started like the the Conjuring universe, I guess, which actually was one of my notes. I think there's like 8 or 9 movies now.
Sinister.
There's like 3. No, so Sinister's not part of it, but
isn't that same?
No, it's not part of like the Conjuring universe. That there's like 3 Conjuring movies. There's like what, 2 or 3 Annabelle movies.
Oh,
there's
yeah,
like
Annabelle.
a Nun movie.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that nun. I forgot about that.
Yeah, from like the second Conjuring.
Creepy as hell.
Yeah, it's getting a little nuts, you know.
Yeah, they just you got to squeeze every cent out of it. You know
Yep.
what I mean? They knew that first one was a great one, so they're just like, let's just keep doing it.
Yeah,
just like
I mean,
Fast and the Furious.
There's a lot of great moments too.
like what? What do you like in that
Like
movie?
the gearing up montage where they're like setting up, they're getting ready to record.
Yeah, pulling out all the crosses and shit.
2 things I like in, 2 things. I like that. I love the gearing up montage. Like, let's get all this equipment set up. Like, we're doing this. Also, it kind of takes away from the horror from there on out for the rest of the film. In my mind, the film is then less scary from that point on because there's so many people in the house. Like, when you're alone in a house, or it's just you and like your siblings, scary, sure.
Yeah.
But now you have like 2 demonologists, a cop, like 2 students, and your whole family, like all in the house together. It kind of takes away from a little bit of that scariness that there's 12 people in the house with you now. Like,
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Overcrowded. How can I be scared when I have like, there's 5 professionals and a cop like in my living room?
Yeah. I mean, your house is still haunted.
Yeah. But
I'd definitely be scared still. I would not be able to live there anymore. If you moved into your house and you had some weird shit happen, like, how do you think you would be able to like deal with that? Because I would just sell my house immediately.
I don't know. I guess it depends on how much you believe in it or not.
You ever have any experiences?
No.
Do you believe in it?
It's one of those things where like I feel like I have to have an experience by myself to
be able to
believe in it. Yeah.
Yeah. But then again, do you want that experience?
It's the other side of the coin. I don't know.
It's the other side of the coin. And terrifying shit. I don't know. It was a good movie though. Like it's not that I watched it long ago. You know, I definitely seen it recently. We watched it again a couple years ago, but it still like holds up. Like I feel like it has like some rewatchability.
Oh,
but it's
absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember the Annabelle movies. I was trying to think about like all the other ones that they were involved with, but like I don't really remember that.
Yeah. I don't either. I remember the Conjuring 2.
That was whenever they were in like a townhouse, right?
That was the one that was like in London or somewhere in Europe.
Yeah.
And I still haven't seen the third Conjuring, which was like The Devil Made Me Do It. I still haven't seen that. But
I had a math teacher at CCAC that used to say that. He used to mess up writing and he would go, "The devil made me do it." And you were like, Jesus.
Weird. Yeah, I don't know. Some of these, franchises are getting a little too crazy with the spinoffs. Like, hey, let's just take this character now from this movie and make a couple about them.
I mean, that's film in general now.
That's true.
It's like, let's make 75 Spider-Mans with, 6 different people. And
Yeah.
just like, come on.
Not a lot of people being original.
No originality anymore.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
It's all about money.
Yeah.
What's quick and easy to make that's going to make money?
But to be fair, I feel like that there is some original things that are coming out
Definitely.
now.
I mean,
like
Jordan Peele, like Get Out.
yeah, like that's all just like, completely original thoughts, like
Right.
very, very wild. Nope. Even though it's like a UAF or UA, whatever the hell they call them now. That's like an original take on shit. It's just like very
Yeah.
weird. And like you have movies like Barbarian and X and stuff like that. X kind of follows like more of a traditional type of formula, but Barbarian is just like you told me and you described to batshit.
Yeah.
You're just like, this is wild.
Yep.
But yeah, a lot of good stuff.
So this is definitely something that, about The Conjuring that I didn't know until I looked it up. The trivia section on IMDb is a fun place, learn some fun facts. But I did not realize, and I guess it makes sense if you think about it, this film received an R rating solely because it's scary. There's like no swearing in the movie. There's no nudity, no sex. There's like some cigarettes and alcohol, but not really anything. Like there's no reason to give it an R rating, but the Motion Picture Association literally said it's too scary to be PG-13.
Wow.
It got an R rating just because of frightening imagery, basically.
Has anything else ever been like that? What was Halloween? R? I guess it would have to be the original one.
Yeah. So there was no PG-13 until I think 84. So things were either PG or R.
That's pretty wild.
G, PG, or R. Yeah.
Wow. So they did that just because it was like creepy.
Yeah. They told him, they were like, we'll make some, they wanted PG-13. PG-13 means more money. It means people in movie theaters aren't turning away the kids. It means, more people are seeing it. And the creators wanted it to be PG-13 so more people could see it. So you make more money, whatever. But the MPA literally said there's no cuts that you could make that we would give this a PG-13. It's just, It's too scary overall.
Is there any other scary movies that you could think of that were like good that weren't like R, that were PG-13?
I don't know.
Yeah,
that's kind of a turnoff, I think, in my mind, is like a PG-13 horror is usually too subdued. It's usually,
Yeah, I don't really think...
You're not hearing someone like, your mother sucks cocks in hell.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess that's pretty wild to think about that.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Any other facts or tidbits?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really cool that the actual family visited the set, and the mother and Lorraine Warren were advisors.
Wow.
They like sat down with like James Wan and all of like the screenwriters and everything to like verify accuracy.
The actual mother.
Yeah. Like they said everything was as accurate as possible, other than the exorcism in the basement at the end, because that was just, made up for the movie.
Yeah.
But everything else that had happened like up until that point, according to them, was factual.
Wow.
Yep.
Where did you just read about that?
Yeah, I just read about that.
That's pretty wild.
Yep.
Bizarre.
And both Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga also wanted to meet with Lorraine Warren. Just say, hey, we're making this movie. We want to make sure everything is accurate.
You have your blessing.
We want your blessing, basically. Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah. And then there's like, if you want to get into the true story.
Yeah.
The true story.
Yeah. What is the true story? Is it pretty accurate or no?
So apparently it is. The state of Rhode Island does not require home sellers to disclose any criminal activity to buyers. Anything that happened on the property, like if someone died.
Is it unless specifically asked?
They do not have to disclose it. I don't know the details. All I know is they don't have to.
Well, it's weird because like you were, that Watcher show is trash. I'm going to urge you not to watch it, but they mentioned that they were like, why didn't you tell us that, this house had a bunch of murders and shit in it? And they were like, technically we don't have to just tell you that. If you ask us it, we have to, but like if you don't. So in every single house we visited in, whenever we were looking to buy a home, that's the first thing I would ask the realtor. Anyone ever die in here? Is this house haunted or anything? Because if they lie to me, maybe I can get some
that money.
Yeah, something happened.
That money.
Because I swear to God, like if I moved into this house and I started hearing pitter pattering, I would sell it immediately.
Yeah.
And live with my parents until I found another one. Because I just mentally could not deal with it. I'm a huge bitch whenever it comes to that stuff.
Yeah. But they apparently they lived there for like 10 years.
That's
like
crazy.
Everything that happened in this 2-hour movie was what had happened over the course of like 10 years. So I think it was like a little bit slower of an escalation in real life.
That's interesting.
It was like a culmination of like 10 years of like offense and weird things happening.
Yeah, it wasn't like a month.
Yeah, it wasn't like the movie made it seem like like less than a month or whatever.
It kind of takes away from it.
It does a little.
Yeah, it kind of takes away from it. One clap every 4 years. One clap every 4 years. You're like, did you hear something? Nothing.
But I guess at the real house, 8 generations of families lived and died in the house before the parents moved in. Some of the deaths include 2 suicides, a rape and murder of an 11-year-old girl,
Jesus.
2 drownings out back, 4 men freeze to death inside the house. And those were like all the weird shit was like mostly just one family. And it was the family that like Bathsheba.
What?
Bathsheba, that's the name of like the demon that possesses the mother.
Jesus.
That was a real person.
Oh.
Who was supposedly a witch that killed like her own daughter. Like the things they talk about in the movie are
Is
true.
it accurate? Yeah.
There's some stuff that is true,
Yeah. Jeez.
She was never like officially convicted, she got off, but like everybody's basically like, yeah, she killed her kid.
Oh, wow.
But the descendants of her family that lived in that house are the ones that mostly had all this weird shit happen to them. Like, like the suicides, the drownings, the rape and the murder. They're mostly all descendants of like her family.
Jeez.
Yep.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And then this Perrin family just moved in and kind of got fucked, because they didn't know what type of house they were buying. They didn't know of
terrible.
The 100 years worth of stuff that was happening in there.
It's like Amityville Horror. Like, oh, this is a beautiful home. They're like, it's not that expensive. Too good to be true. Yeah,
always,
it is.
Always.
Amityville Horror is a good one.
Yeah.
Never seen the original.
They reference it in this film too. Like at the very, very end, Lorraine is like on the phone as the movie's ending.
I
she
think
says
I remember
something
that.
to Ed about like, oh, there's a case on Long Island.
Yeah.
That's the Amityville Horror. So they do a little kind of like nod to it in this because that was Ed and Lorraine Warren too. That was like another one of their cases. But
can you imagine the ghost having a Long Island accent like Pete Davidson?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I agree with the score. Rotten Tomatoes score of 86 and 83.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, for this kind of movie, which I'd almost kind of lump this in as like modern horror.
Yeah,
where it kind of has that like the formula of like modern horror. Relies a lot on jump scares. This backs it up. This backs up the jump scares. It has the
there's still a lot of jump scares. When that chick's crawling through, the little girl's crawling through. I mean,
there absolutely are a lot of jump scares.
Getting chased by that, you're like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, terrifying. And then we make a bigger jump. 3 years, I guess it's not, or 2 years, not too big of a jump. To The Witch. Now, this is like I would say that this is my first experience with like, how did you describe this whenever you called this? This isn't modern horror. This is like...
the term that people like to use. They actually used it in the newest Scream movie, elevated horror.
Elevated horror, that's what it is.
Which is kind of like...
Snobby.
Yeah, like, snobby. You wouldn't understand this movie.
The Witch, 2015. In 1630 New England, panic and despair envelopes a farmer, his wife, and their children when the youngest son, Samuel, suddenly vanishes. The family blames Thomasin, the oldest daughter who was watching the boy at the time of his disappearance. With suspicion and paranoia mounting, twin siblings Mercy and Jonas suspect Thomasin of witchcraft, testing the clan's faith, loyalty, and love to one another. Now, this movie, I hated it the first time I seen it in theaters. And then, after I watched it with subtitles, which I feel is very necessary, it completely changed my outlook on it.
Yeah. I didn't hate it the first time I saw it, but I was confused.
Yeah.
Because I was expecting more of like The Conjuring, for example. I was expecting more of just like jump scare after jump scare after jump scare. And like I said, I have nothing against jump scares, but that's just kind of what I was expecting.
Yeah, it's because like we were saying before, that's like what modern horror is. It's like integrated jump scares. That's what it relies on. But this was so unique because there was none really. There was the one big one.
Yep.
And whenever I watch this, like we were talking about before, Ryan has always had a elevated take on movies, and not to, it's not a snobby take, but it's more elevated. That's like, you research into it, you look into it, you notice different things, you watch things over and over to notice things on purpose. I'm more of a face value where if, I don't like it at first, I'm just never going to watch it again really. But, 2 years ago, whenever we did that horror movie survival guide, this is where I watched it with subtitles at home, took notes, and was like completely blown away by it. And you were telling me before that like, the accuracies of this movie are, as close as you could be. And I don't know, it was great. Now, what was interesting, Rotten Tomatoes score 90% from the critic and then 60% from the audience.
Yeah.
And I feel like the elevated connotation kind of speaks to that 60%.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see that a lot with independent movies, especially modern ones like The Witch, Hereditary, Midsommar, like, things that like A24 and Neon are putting out. You're going to see that kind of divide between the general audience and the critics, because a lot of these movies require, and I'm not saying the general audience isn't thinking, but a lot of these movies do require like, some thinking.
Yeah.
It's not just like something's jumping out at you behind a corner and then you're scared for a second and then you're fine.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's kind of like how I was the first time I watched it, where I was, expecting that. And if the general audience is going in expecting that,
yeah,
and they're
going to be disappointed.
They don't get any of that,
yeah,
they're going to be disappointed. They don't want to think about like, oh, who was the witch? Was the witch there the whole time? Like, was she actually like practicing witch? They don't want to really like have to think all this stuff over.
Yeah, you want to lay it out.
They just want to be scared and go home.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's a good way to think about it. And this is like, I don't know, would you say that this is like one of the first ones that like kind of, cross over into that elevated category?
Yeah, at least for like, the modern studios like A24. I think this was like their first widely released horror film.
Yeah, because this is still considered a mainstream movie, right?
Right.
But it's like very, very bizarre. It's probably the most bizarre mainstream movie that I've seen. They're speaking in Old English that's like very super accurate. Mm-hmm. I think Dan was saying that like that he was reading like old town logs and county logs and everything from back then in like the 1630 to try to like develop the dialogue of what was going on in the movie.
Yeah, like there was a lot of, documentation back then on not just on witch trials, but on any kind of anything going on. Like that was what was referenced to develop the dialogue. What did people sound like back then? What did they talk about?
Yeah.
And how did they say these things? Because he wanted it to be as accurate as possible.
Yeah.
Which I feel like, it is. The production value as well is really well done. Everything looks very authentic.
Yeah. I think he said that he found a roof thatcher that like is the only person left in existence that knows how to do it that way.
Yeah. It's just kind of nuts. Like the amount of detail that went in. And it's also kind of funny too, because I watched the film with the commentary on. Yeah. And when they're leaving the village at the beginning and you see them, they're like kind of pulling away, the village is in the background. On the commentary, Robert Eggers is like, and we had to cut right here because that's all the fence we could afford. He's like, if that, that carriage would have come a little bit further, there was just no fence there. So it's like funny to like hear things like that, but it's cool too.
I've never once watched a movie with commentary on, and I don't know why I never did.
I love it. I'll watch some things sometimes like 2 or 3 times just like in a week, because I'll watch it on its own, then I'll watch it with the commentary, and then I'll watch it like again on its own maybe. It also kind of takes away from it too, because sometimes, the things that might normally freak you out, they're in your head, you're making up explanations, but they're laying it out for you. Like, there'd be times with like Black Phillip, and on the, Robert Eggers would be like, oh, you can't see him, but there's a guy in a green suit, like a green screen suit, holding his horns to like control him. It's just like things like that. Like, okay, now every time I watch this movie and I see Black Phillip, I'm picturing a guy in like a green Morphe suit or Morphe suit or whatever it's called, like behind him holding his horns.
Yeah, I guess that does kind of take away from it a little bit. That's interesting though. I don't know. I'm someone who always likes I like to see how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
It's more interesting to me. What were some of like your favorite, like what are some things about the movie that you enjoyed the most?
It sounds cheesy to say the historical accuracy, because I wasn't around back then. I don't know. I mean, this could be super inaccurate, but from everything I've read online, it is very accurate. Like I said,
it's immersive.
Yes, the production value. There's not something that like kind of takes you out of it. You're in it the whole time.
Yeah, that's fair. There really is not one thing that they didn't like. No stone was left unturned. Like, and it was almost like jarring to watch the first time. Whenever he would, like, I saw this in the movie theater, like I was saying, and it's almost like you're almost like caught off guard that like you have to try to like decipher this old English from like hundreds of years ago that you just like it's almost like it obligates you to watch it again because you're concentrating so much on like trying to hear the dialogue that you can't really get as in depth as you would want to.
You definitely get more out of it watching it with subtitles. Normally I don't use subtitles, but this one I would recommend it. I think even without subtitles, you get the gist of what's going on.
Yeah.
But like the subtitles definitely help understand what's really going on. Because there's some conversations, the dad has a very deep voice.
Yeah.
And I can't,
it's so wild.
Like, what the hell did he just say?
Yeah.
But
he sounds like I don't know. It sounds like almost fake, like a made up voice. Yeah. Is that, now that dude, is he a foreign actor? Probably.
I don't know, actually.
I've never seen him in anything else. Was this Anna Taylor-Joy's? Was that her name, Anna?
Yeah, Anya.
Anya. Is this her first? Like
it is. Yep.
This was her first acting ever.
Yeah.
How old was she?
Good question. 18.
Really?
Yeah. So she was 18 in this.
I guess she would have to be because she was nude.
Yeah. So, well, not actually. They used like skin colored suits and like edited it out or whatever.
Oh, I guess so.
Yeah. But
that was wild.
It was a first for her.
Now,
and it was Robert Eggers' first film too.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that was like his first movie.
Yeah,
like, pretty wild.
But also it makes it better. It's like he had something to prove. He took so much care, and there's so many details. Like you said, he didn't leave any boxes unchecked.
Yeah, like this was his one shot, and he wanted to do it right.
Yep. I mean, even just like down to like there's little things, and I didn't even notice this. I read about this, and I didn't even notice this because I don't think anybody would notice this unless you knew about witchcraft. You knew about the history of like witchcraft. But even like whenever the corn is rotting, he's outside and he's holding like an ear of corn that's rotten. The corn is covered in, I don't know how you pronounce this, ergot, E-R-G-O-T, which is a fungus, an actual fungus that produces hallucinogen ergotamine or something like that, which was commonly believed to be the cause of all the mass hysteria surrounding witchcraft back then.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
It was like making people go crazy. This fungus was like everywhere.
Yeah.
That's not something that I would pick up, unless I read about it, because I don't know the history of witchcraft or anything like that.
That's interesting.
But even like little details like that, like, okay. Like,
that are interworked like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
The title using two V's, because in 1630, the letter W wasn't like a commonly used letter. So using two V's in the title to make the W. Just like the littlest details.
Yeah, I like stuff like that.
He included all of it.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. How old is this dude?
I think he's in his 30s.
Wow. Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Has he done another movie since then?
Two more. So he had The Lighthouse.
Oh, never seen that yet.
Robert Pattinson, Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
And then just most recently, he had The Northman with Alexander Skarsgård.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, was this like, how was this movie received?
By critics, it was very well received. You know, when it did like the
festival?
When it went around like the festival circuit, like it was winning awards, everybody loved it.
Yeah.
But like we kind of touched on when it was widely released,
some people just didn't understand it.
Right. People like come off of The Conjuring 2 years before this, and
that's fair.
The horror movies of that time primarily based around the jump scare, and they're just a little thrown off.
Huh. Now, I thought that some of the things that I thought that were wild in this is like, the scene whenever the baby gets taken away, definitely crazy. There's not a lot of jump scares, so it's all psychological. And like, a lot of the movies that we were talking about, like, yeah, The Exorcist, like, lays it all out for you. Rosemary's Baby was psychological. Strangers was psychological. Like, I like movies that like where you have to kind of like, all your fears built into your mind. You keep wondering, are these little twins? Are one of them demons? Is this goat really a demon?
Right.
Just weird things. But one of my favorite things in the movie.
What dost thou want?
What canst thou give?
Wouldst thou like the taste of butter? A pretty dress,
Now, that's Black Phillip's, that devil's voice. And whenever I went to get that audio file off of YouTube, the first comment said, "This is what the Army recruiter said to me." I thought that was the funniest. But I don't know. I thought that like the representation of the devil and Black Phillip, like, I didn't know anything about Black Phillip. Apparently he's a cultural figure along, that whole world. But it was so scary to me, the devil. Like, the devil in this was just so creepy because, like, I imagine that, like, the devil would be talking to you like that, he wouldn't be some scary thing. He would be like some, hot ass chick in a red dress or something, you know what I mean? Or a well-spoken, soft-spoken, creepy ass goat, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's just bizarre to think about that.
Yeah. And then, I mean, going back to what I was just saying, he's asking her if she would like to taste butter.
Yeah.
That's another little like thing he included is apparently, I didn't know this either until I read about it. The Catholic Church used to think that butter was a sin. That
really
eating butter was a sin.
No way.
Yeah. Back in like the 15th century, like if you ate butter, you were a sinner.
Jeez.
So that's why Satan asked, you want to eat some butter?
Why do you think that I mean, do you have any other like facts or anything like that are worked into there?
Yeah, like so I guess this is another like little thing that he just was like making sure was accurate. Whenever Jonas and Mercy are like saying like the Lord's Prayer and they can't finish it, I guess it used to be widely believed that a witch could not recite the Lord's Prayer start to finish.
Oh, wow.
And they can't, at that one part, they can't. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was like he looked up every single possible thing he could on witchcraft.
A lunatic.
And was like, going over it with the crew, like, did we put this in yet? Did we put them not being able to finish the Lord's Prayer in yet?
I wonder, like, what didn't get into the final cut? Like, what are some other things that, like, ideas that he had to put in there that, like, he didn't put in? But I don't know. It's weird because, like, we were talking about like, jump scares being like, not utilized as much as they commonly are, but the vivid, scary ass imagery, they have that in this as well. Yeah. Just enough to like scratch that itch. Like you got this crazy ass witch, she grabs a baby and grinds him up and rubs it all over herself.
Yep.
And it's like, you just see it and, it's almost jarring because the whole movie you don't really see anything. And then you're just like, holy shit, like this is happening.
Yep. And that actress's name who played like the old witch is Bathsheba. Her actual name in real life is Bathsheba, which is the name of the witch
in The Conjuring.
The Conjuring.
Holy shit. That's bizarre.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was like, you think he used that on purpose?
No, probably not. It just
find someone with a Satan name. No, I don't want a Karen. Find someone with a Satan name. That's pretty wild.
Yep.
Do you watch the commentary with this and everything?
Yeah.
No, yeah, I guess you just said that. Does he say anything else wild in there?
I mean, there's like little things here and there, but
nothing noteworthy.
No, I mean,
I got to watch it with the commentary.
I would recommend it. I mean, it's fun because you like, he'll tell you about like what it was like working with the crew and like the cast.
Where was this at?
Where was it filmed?
Yeah.
I feel like it was filmed in like Canada, but I'm not 100% sure.
Wild. Yeah. I'm always fascinated by like how long, like it's always weird to hear people talk about filming shit and like how they'll film scenes out of order and like, just like how things are. And if like you film something like towards the end of the movie first and you have to like have that sort of like temperament and you film something, from the beginning of the movie, like, you film that last almost, it's weird to think about that, how you have to like, string together that like built up, cultivated,
right.
How that emotion is going to be in that time. I don't know. It's just wild to think about these actors. Cause I was like really getting into like, Linda Blair, thinking about Linda Blair playing, this devil as a 12-year-old, so wild. And like, her doing that like hypnotized scene. And it's just like how these like young kids could like really like conceptualize. I was a fucking idiot. You know, like I don't know if I would have been able to. Like,
Yeah.
And you have the two kids that play Jonas and Mercy. You know, them kids were so creepy.
Yep.
You know, they were just creepy as hell.
Yep.
And do you think that they just have like handlers? Like, do you think their parents are like, you know, kind of like telling them how to do it?
Probably.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because even like back to like Halloween, you know, with like you know, Tommy.
Yeah.
Like the Halloween. Like there's been like, that was another thing out on a commentary for Halloween that I listened to where Jamie Lee Curtis was basically like, Tommy was so bad. Like even these scenes where we're just like sitting on the couch, you know, and he gets up to go look out the window to see the boogeyman or whatever. She's like, he was just like bouncing all over the place. Like he was just like hard to work with, you know, like just like any kid.
Yeah.
You know, a kid's not going to want to be on a film set for 10 hours a day or whatever.
Yeah, it's
so
wild.
it's like, you know, she's like, I had to kind of like work with him as like a kid, you know. Treat
That's
him
pretty
like a
interesting.
kid. But yeah.
Anything else we missed with The Witch?
Just that the Satanic Temple endorses the film and hosts regular screenings of it because they love it.
Really?
Yeah. They call it quote unquote an impressive presentation of satanic insight.
Jesus.
Yeah, they love it.
Wow. That's fucking weird.
Yeah.
Where's the Satanic Temple? Is it in Salem?
I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like it's somewhere over there. All right. And then we are on to our final film, which I feel is literally the scariest movie I've ever watched in my life. Hereditary came out in 2018. Synopsis: when the matriarch of the Graham family passes away, her daughter and grandchildren begin to unravel cryptic and increasingly terrifying secrets about their ancestry, trying to outrun the sinister fate they have inherited. Now, to speak to that, Hereditary, the name of it. What do you think about whenever you hear Hereditary? Whenever you watch the movie, like after you watch the movie, you know, actually, first of all, Rotten Tomatoes score, critically 90%, audience 69%. Very weird to me because I thought the audience score would have been, you know, almost kind of equal to the critic score.
I think it's another one of those ones where it's kind of like The Witch, where it does require a little more thinking.
Yeah.
But it makes sense for the audience score to be a little higher on Hereditary because it does lean into the modern.
Yeah, modern.
Horror. It does have, you know,
100%.
jump scare too. It's a little bit more modern.
I don't even
in that
feel
sense,
like that really has what it's to do with it. I think that it's just like, you know, it's modern time, you know,
Yeah.
the speech is modern time,
Yeah.
you know, but I guess I can understand what you're saying as far as like, you know, it's more easy to,
but it is a film where it's like, it's not like The Exorcist in the sense where you're focused on one person the entire time,
it's just
who
like
you can clearly
it's a
see.
world almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is weird. This movie, whenever I watched it the first time, absolutely terrified. And it kind of gets you from the beginning, you know, like you just. I remember watching this, not ever seeing a trailer, not ever. I stopped watching trailers a long time ago, but whenever I thought of Hereditary, like after I was done with it, you know, you think of the movie and you're like, oh yeah, you know. Why is it called Hereditary? You know, hereditary means it's ingrained in your family. You know, I thought that it was just like an interesting title. What did you think about the movie whenever you watched this for the first time?
I loved it because it scared me. You know, it really freaked me out. But I didn't really think too much into the title.
Yeah.
You know, I have recently, you know, more recently thought about Hereditary, but at the time I didn't really think about like Hereditary and what that means exactly. But, you know, now I do think about that.
Yeah, well, I remember it being like, you know, in my mind in the beginning, because the first thing you see in the movie that's like not really a jump scare, but it is like the grandmother. It's like, you know, she turns off them lights and you just see like the silhouette of a grandmother and you're like, Jesus. And there's no noise or nothing.
But it builds the same, what would you call it? The same tension, the same terror as your traditional jump scare does.
Yeah.
Because when you see her, when she turns the lights off and you see her, and she stares for a second, she flips the lights back on.
Yeah.
You're waiting for that.
Yeah.
But you don't get that traditional jump scare.
It's almost
relief.
like, did I see that? And because
Right.
like if you're not in like a weirdly lit place, or if you're watching it at home and your TV's on like a weird setting, you might not even really see that.
Right.
And I remember I was watching this at home the first time I saw it, and I remember thinking like, what the hell was that? And then rewinding it and then looking at it again, and it's creepy, but immediately was the grandmother. So it's the grandmother. So
right.
you're like, oh, Hereditary, like this, like something has to do with her. Like that was like the first thing that pops into my mind, like something weird with your grandmother. But then like, you know, it opens with like, you know, all this like weird shit with this like mini models and everything. And I don't know, it was just like bizarre. But what did you like about it? Like what were some things you liked about it?
So I have a lot of things that I liked about it. And it's kind of goes back to like what I was saying about Rosemary's Baby, where like the little things you might not pick up on after first watch. Things like when they get home from the funeral, right before they enter the house, the camera's already in the house and you hear like footsteps upstairs. There are people in the house already, you know, cult members. There's a shot of Charlie walking into the backyard. You know, she's just kind of like wandering into the backyard, and there's like an overhead shot and there's footsteps in the mud. And I think they're going the opposite direction, like towards the house.
Yeah.
They're not hers. You know, this idea that they're being watched the whole time, that the cult members are in and amongst them. They're in the house. They're out of the house. They're surrounding the house.
Yeah.
One of them is actually one of Peter's friends.
What?
You might not catch it on a first or second viewing, but whenever Peter's like under the bleachers smoking a bowl with like his like three friends, the one has like a very distinct ponytail, or it's like a man bun or something like that. And then at the end in the treehouse,
he's in there.
Yeah.
Holy shit. I never noticed that.
Yeah. Like the cult members are, and then in the funeral, the very beginning of the funeral, the guy that's like, remember the guy is naked at the end, smiling in the closet?
Yeah.
He's at the funeral. You know,
Oh,
Charlie is looking at her grandmother in the coffin, and she turns and looks to her, and the guy is staring at her real creepy, smiling real creepy. Like all throughout the movie, the cult members are kind of like in the background, like moving amongst them. You see them, you can hear them, but you don't really know they're there or what's going on.
Until you see the movie.
Right.
Yeah, it's weird because like I don't pick that up, but it's like there's small things that you know that mean something that they're showing, and you're like, what the fuck could that mean? Like
right.
Whenever he's driving her to the party, you know, like now I watch all these movies, and anything that's in a movie, I wonder like why the hell is that movie? Like if a song's playing on the radio, like in The Strangers, whenever the first knock was going on in that door, there was a song on the radio that kept saying, don't go outside, don't go outside. And like, I never would pick that up.
Right.
But now I think about stuff like that, and you're like, that's so bizarre.
Yeah.
So anything, and so in the movie early on, you know, the mother, Toni Collette's like, you know, is that chocolate? Does that have peanuts in it?
Yep.
And like the little kid, Charlie, is like, no, there's no nuts in this. And you're like, why is she saying that? You know, like, why is that made a point?
Yeah.
Why is that like brought to light? And then obviously Peter takes Charlie to this party. He gets stoned. She eats a piece of cake with nuts in it. And then the whole thing pops off from there.
Yep.
But on the way to the party, on the telephone pole, you see that like cult seal.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that until like the third time watching this.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's going to mean more the second time around, because if you have somehow managed to avoid all spoilers, you've never seen this, and you're watching them drive to the party,
why would you
have
even
no
think?
clue why is it lingering on this telephone pole for like a couple seconds? You see there's like a symbol, but that doesn't mean anything to you unless you're really observant, because that's not the first time the symbol is shown in the movie.
Yeah, it's on her grandmother's necklace.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're really observant, you'll recognize that there's a connection, but you still don't know what's the purpose of it being on this telephone pole.
Yeah, it's weird because, you know, like I remember thinking, like, I remember watching it the first time and not even like taking that into consideration. You're just like, oh, it's just like a cool shot. You know, the car goes by and it stays there. It's like, why? But now, obviously, you know, the ending that takes off her head, just pops it right off.
Yep.
And then, you know, all hell breaks loose. But we were talking about this on the first episode we were trying to record about how, you know, you said that all this shit was set up by the cult members. And like, that kind of like took me by surprise because I never really like put that together. And now that I was thinking about it, it does make sense. But like, that's the only thing that kind of took away from the movie for me is like how all this stuff happened, like why that cult member or why that symbol was on that telephone pole. How did they know that was going to happen? Why did that happen? Like, how was that like timed so perfectly? But that's that movie magic that you just have to let go.
And also, I mean, like I said just a little bit ago, they're always around.
Yeah.
They probably knew that they were going to that party. They knew what road they were going to be taking. They knew, okay, if we put this dead deer, dead dog, whatever it is in the road right here, he's going to swerve. It's a little bit of like, suspend that disbelief. It's a little bit of movie magic. Everything just works out perfectly, but it is a lot of like the cult members. They're there, they're watching, they know what's going on.
But then you think about like Toni Collette made him take Charlie to the party.
Right.
Why did that happen? Is it like, in Rosemary's Baby, a guy gets the acting job because his competition goes blind. Mm-hmm. And they say that in cults, everyone in there could focus their power on one sole thing and make something happen. So it's like, does that like technique, so to speak, transfer over and like how all these cult members just like channel all their power to make these things happen?
I think so, but I think there's a bigger picture, and the bigger picture is that this isn't their first time trying to summon Payman. This is at least the second time, maybe the third, maybe the fourth time, and they've been unsuccessful thus far. When Annie goes to that meeting, she kind of just starts venting about her whole family. And one of the things she said is that her brother hung himself because her mother put people inside of him. So,
oh shit, I never put that together.
Annie's brother, who hung himself, was most likely going to be the vessel for Payman. But her brother killed himself when he realized what was happening. Killed himself, hung himself, like she says. So this isn't the first time this cult has tried to like summon Payman.
Yeah.
That's also another reason why the grandmother was so insistent that Annie have kids too.
Oh shit.
So I think that they're kind of like, I don't want to say running out of time, running out of options, but I think it's one of those things where they've probably tried over and over again to summon him. So they're using a little bit more of their witchy powers this time. Like, set everything up perfectly. I don't know though. Like I said, a little bit of movie magic, but also, it's tried and failed before.
Yeah, it was a weird movie. It had a great build. Like all the shit that was happening, it built evenly.
Yep.
There was like that Jurassic, where Charlie's head gets knocked off and then it kind of chills for a second.
But even that is like, that's not a jump scare. That's not your traditional scare because you know what's coming. I mean, it gives
it's like a shocking
it gives
scare.
You right, but it gives
not
you
shocking in a way like that. It's more just like a violent shock.
But it gives you enough time to realize what's about to happen. She puts her window down. She sticks her head out.
Yeah.
You then remember the poll from 5 minutes earlier.
And you're like, no, this isn't going to happen.
It gives you enough time to put it together in your head before it actually happens.
Like, she's about to get her head popped off.
It does a great job of like giving you enough time, not to relax, but like
just enough time to get to that conclusion. Like be like,
oh wait, she's gonna boom, it happens.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good point. I never really thought about that, but I have to say that whenever you were, whenever I first watched this, I didn't really understand that was even a thought that the cult orchestrated this whole plan, and I thought that was way scarier. But because I feel like it's not realistic now. But if you have some cult magic where you're trying to like channel everything, I get it. But movie was definitely terrifying. Toni Collette MVP as usual.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a shame that she didn't get any nominations or like she should have. I mean, the Academy kind of looks down on horror. You rarely see horror things nominated. I mean, like Get Out, that won best screenplay, best original screenplay, but you just rarely see horror nominated. And even when it comes to like actors, and she really should have. I think she gave a great performance. Yeah, an incredible performance.
Well,
it's a shame.
Is there just a best horror film or just best film?
Just best film.
Yeah, and this wasn't even nominated.
No.
Yeah, which is wild. It's definitely crazy. What was this was what's his name? The director?
Oh, Ari Aster.
How many films has he done?
Just 2 as of right now. Just this, which was his first.
Yeah, crazy to think about.
Midsommar. Yeah.
Oh, that's wild to think about.
Yep.
You know, just to come out like this. Now, this was well received from critics.
Yes.
And, you know, the audience, like we were saying, is like, you know, kind of a little bit more, 3 out of 4 people almost.
Yeah.
But definitely something that I feel is...
It's going to always come up on, if you ask someone scariest, you know, scary movies that are actually scary, this will be on there.
Why do you think that? What makes this scary to you?
You know, it's kind of like what you were saying, where it's not, I don't want to say believable, because I guess you would have to believe in the occult, believe in something else, but it is relatable because the story, if you leave the occult stuff out of it, which the first draft of the film was, the first draft in the film was like a drama almost about grief and loss.
Yeah.
Everybody can experience that feeling after that happens, you know, and everything that's happening with the family, that unsettling, that uneasy feeling, you know,
unraveling
when they're sitting around the dinner table and, you know, no one's saying anything.
Cue it.
Just seems like there might be something you want to say.
Peter. Like what? I mean, why would I want to say something so I could watch you sneer at me?
Sneer at you? I don't ever sneer at you.
Oh, sweetie, you don't have to. You get your point across.
Okay, so fine, then say what you want to say then.
Peter. I don't want to say anything. I've tried saying
Okay, so
things.
try again. Release yourself.
Oh, release you mean?
Yeah, fine, release me. Just say it. Just fucking say it.
Don't you swear at me, you little shit! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother! Do you understand? All I do is worry and slave and defend you, and all I get back is that fucking face on your face! So full of disdain and resentment and always so annoyed. Well, now your sister is dead. And I know you miss her. And I know it was an accident. And I know you're in pain. And I wish I could take that away for you. I wish I could shield you from the knowledge that you did what you did. But your sister is dead. She's gone forever. And what a waste. If it could have maybe brought us together or something. If you could have just said, I'm sorry, or faced up to what happened, maybe then we could do something with this. But you can't take responsibility for anything. So now I can't accept. And I can't forgive. Because nobody admits anything they've done.
Cut the tension with a knife. But the first time you watch that in the movie theater, and like,
I mean, it's dead quiet because everybody is just like,
yeah. Because in the beginning, you don't know it's going to blow up like that. They're just sitting down for dinner.
Right.
You know, I mean, you could hear a footstep upstairs, but it's just like escalades like 0 to 100 real quick.
Yep.
And I don't know, Toni Collette. And then like, I didn't even put this together. I remember thinking about this whenever we did that episode in 2020, that like, I didn't realize that she was the mother in The Sixth Sense. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, and you're just like, the performance in that was just like masterful. And you're just like, she kills it. Yep. And then you see her in like Krampus and kills it in that as well. And you know, you can't beat it.
She's great at playing a mother.
Yeah, she really is.
A mother under stress.
A mother under stress. That's just trying to make some shit happen.
Yep.
Anything else that you read about that's like that are like anything that is your favorite in this movie? Some things you like? Because the only other thing that I got is the silent scare of the creepy naked guy at the end.
Yep.
Is probably like one of the scariest. And I mean, like, there's a lot of jump scares in this. Right. Like we were talking about the first time we recorded, it went from 3/4 of the way, just eerie psychological. And then it kind of like loosens that up.
It gets a little unhinged at the end, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It works. It works very well. It's a lot of build up to that point, and it's a really good payoff.
Yeah.
I love the ending. In the pitch meeting for it, Ari Aster described the film as, quote unquote, a story about a long-lived possession ritual told from the perspective of the sacrificial lamb.
Oh, that's wild.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, interesting to like get. It's like it's the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. You had my attention, or you had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
Yeah. I didn't know this until I looked this up. The decapitation scene was actually based on something that actually happened. Apparently, in Georgia, 2 drunk guys were like coming back from like a party together. One guy's drunk driving, the other guy's a passenger, and I guess he leans out the window to like puke or something, and he gets his head taken. He gets his head taken off by a telephone pole. But the guy who's driving is like too drunk to realize it just happened. Drove home, parked the car, went inside, went to bed, found the body the next day.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
Ruined me letting my dogs put their heads out the window because that's all I think about now.
Yeah.
Definitely just a wild movie. I really feel like this is probably the scariest movie I've ever seen.
It's great. I mean, it's a great film. It really blends together.
The rewatchability is fantastic.
That's great rewatchability. I could watch it, I watch it probably at least once a year, around Halloween. It doesn't get old.
Yeah, and it is just as creepy, even whenever you know the ending. Now, what was insane is like the last time when we recorded this the other day, you kind of like got into like, the real like kind of why all this was, like how Charlie was like really what they were looking for, but they just needed a male's, like that was like mind blowing to me because I feel like I loved the movie and I just like still didn't even understand it all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I didn't understand any of that part, like any of the, how that was like interweaved with like what really was.
Right. And like the actual, payment and everything.
Yeah.
But I guess, they actually changed it for the movie because, taking it back to the start of this conversation, movies that typically use real demonic imagery and symbols like The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby always have on-set accidents. Someone dies, someone gets hurt.
Did someone die on The Exorcist?
Something bad happens. I think it was just with no one died on The Exorcist, but I think, a lot of like weird things with like Ellen Burstyn, like really hurt her back, like Linda Blair hurt her back, like just like things like that, like things that weren't supposed to happen, like, oh, this machine malfunctioned and then smacked like Linda Blair's back, and like Rosemary's Baby, like the composer for Rosemary's Baby died the same way Hutch did in the movie, went into a coma for 3 months and died. Like,
oh shit.
They actually, the producers and like Ari Aster and everybody, I think they kind of got together and they were like, let's change up let's use the name, let's use some of the symbols, but let's change it for the movie because it's just like widely believed that by using the demonic imagery and the symbols in the film, you're essentially cursing the production.
Yeah.
Whether you believe in whatever you believe in, you're cursing the production, that something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
Someone's going to get hurt, something's going to catch on fire, something with the production is going to go wrong.
Yeah.
So the symbol is normally like 4, they change it to 3 for the film. Payman was normally shown carrying like 4 heads in the bag, but I think they changed it to like 3 for the movie, but it works out with them too, with like the story they're telling, but they just slightly changed it just because of like past occurrences of things like happening on sets.
Very weird.
Unexplained occurrences whenever there's, the devil's at play.
So is there any other like facts or tidbits that you read about that you like? Did you watch this with the commentary?
I did. Not this year, but like a year or 2 ago I did.
It would be interesting. Like being on a set to film a movie like this.
Yeah.
I would assume months along, like what is set like? Are people laughing? Do people...
This was actually shot in a month.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 32 days.
It's pretty wild. There's really not too many people in it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was all... The exterior shots were all real, but they rebuilt the house on a soundstage for all the interiors.
Usually that's how they're doing it.
Which makes
everything.
sense. I mean, nowadays, it's
like if you think the Home Alone house really looks like that from the outside, you're sadly mistaken. That was built in a high school gym. Very weird. All right. Anything else for that?
No.
Well, how do you think we should end this?
I don't know.
I mean, we kind of went through them all pretty thoroughly.
Yeah.
Do you think so?
I think so.
I don't think that there's really anything that we really forgot. I think that we accomplished our goal.
Yeah.
What are your plans for Halloween?
I'm going to be at work. I might wear a costume. I don't know.
Are you allowed?
Yeah.
You're allowed there?
Yeah, I just can't I can't wear a mask, which sucks because it probably goes Michael Myers. But like, I just have my mask like.
What do you wear a hot dog costume? Now, is that like a big movie day on Halloween?
No. I mean, this weekend will probably be a little bit busier. Just people coming to see like Halloween. We still have Smile, Terrifier 2. Like there's people that are going to come see like horror movies this weekend, but no, like Halloween day isn't like a big movie day.
Have you watched any recent movies that stick out that you enjoyed very much?
Recently, I really liked Barbarian. So a lot of people are talking about Smile right now.
Yeah.
You know, it's very popular, but I liked Barbarian a lot more than Smile. And I mean, they just added Barbarian to HBO.
Yeah.
I don't want to give anything away, but the thing Barbarian really does well is it doesn't, like we were kind of talking about earlier, Barbarian doesn't let you have that jump scare relief.
Yeah.
It does a lot of setting something up and you're like, I know what's going to happen next. And then it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't follow the formula.
Right.
And it feels like something, it feels like a fresh take. I feel like it's a good way to wrap it up, huh?
Yeah.
What are your favorite 3 Halloween candies?
Probably like Twix, Kit Kat, and I mean, I get made fun of for this, but I really like Smarties.
That's a terrible choice.
Chalky sugar.
What's your least favorite candy? Like whenever you got it, you were like, what the hell is this?
You know what it used to be? I used to hate caramel apple lollipops, but I love them now.
Ew. I can just see the paper sticking too. My favorite candies definitely were Kit Kats. Back then, I used to love Three Musketeers. I cannot eat that at all now.
Yeah, it's just
it's too sweet now. But I like a Reese's cup, old fashioned Reese's cup. But yeah, I don't know. And I like I like a Milky Way now. I never used to. Yeah. I never used to ever get a Milky Way. I started to really enjoy them.
Yeah.
Least favorite candies. If you hand out Necco wafers, I'm going to slash your tires. But I appreciate you coming on to talk to me.
Thanks for having me.
This is the second time we collectively spent about 5 hours talking about horror movies.
Yeah.
But I feel like that this is a tighter one. This is a good one. This is
it was fun.
This was a fun one. I think that this will be good. I'm excited to listen again. Everyone else that's listening, Halloween is officially today, and tomorrow it's officially over. So I'm going to put on my Santa Claus suit, and we're going to start getting ready to slide into the old holidays. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
going to slide into the holidays.
Time for some Mariah Carey.
Maybe we'll do another one of these about Christmas movies. If you like this episode, you're listening, and you want to hear some Christmas ones, whether it be a horror Christmas episode or
Black Christmas.
I've never seen it still, so that would be good to talk about. Or your typical Santa Claus. They're coming out with another Santa Claus movie. Gonna fucking ruin it. But yeah, everyone listening, I appreciate it. Have a happy Halloween. If you're not giving out Halloween candy tonight, don't ever fucking listen to this episode again. Because if you're not, if you're not having if kids don't come to your house, that's one thing. But if you got a neighborhood where kids are going out for trick-or-treating and you didn't go out and buy Halloween candy for them, you're a soulless piece of trash. And I don't want to be associated with you. And that's how judgmental I'm going to be. And I'm going to leave you at that. Thanks for listening. Call you right back.